People ask me all the time, what do I want my legacy to be? I don't care. If 3 generations from now, they don't remember Fawn Weaver lived, I don't care. And that's the interesting thing, because I'm so passionate about cementing the legacy of Nearest Green, but I don't actually care about people remembering me. Maybe that's why I'm the steward of this story, that I was chosen to be this generation's baton holder of this story and building this brand to pass it to the next generation, is because I don't think about myself in the process at all. As a kid, I don't know that I would say I was entrepreneurial. I would say that people would have called me rebellious, as they did. And I think most entrepreneurs would have been called rebellious as their kids. So maybe it means the same thing in childhood. If someone called our house, we would have to pick up the phone and say, it's a great day at the Wilson house. How may I help you? Well, what do you do if it's not a great day? And so I was that child that was like, I'm not going to say it's a great day. I'm not having a great day. And so there was just a nonstop battle with myself and my parents. And at the age of 15, they had a new baby girl, and they wanted to have an opportunity to raise her without there being a negative influence in the house. So they sat me down, and it was a, sort of shape up or ship out type of conversation. It was very much so, listen, we want to have the opportunity to raise her without you negatively impacting her. And so you have 2 choices. Either you do what we are now telling you to do as your parents in this household, or you have to leave. I think I was there another hour. My mom says she remembers me leaving out with a backpack and a lunch pail. When I left home at 15, I dropped out of high school not too long after. And so I found myself at a place called My Friend's Place. And it's for young people. And then the only place that had a bed for me was Children of the Night. When I turned 18, I could no longer be at Children of the Night. So they moved me to Covenant House. And so at Covenant House, every day you go out with your resume, you go out and you look for a job. It's a requirement. You either have to go to school or you have to go out and look for a job. I went out the very first day, and I came back, and we have these campfire things that you would do, and everyone around the campfire was lamenting about how hard it is to find a job, and they went out and they put out this and that and this and that. And I sat there silent, because I went out and came back with 4 jobs. And I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm different. Beginning my first business at 18, I started with 2 clients, both paying me, I think, $5,000 a month. I thought I was really rich. But then you learn that your top line and your bottom line don't mirror one another if you hire a whole bunch of people. And I think I had, like, between part-time and full-time, like 10 people working with me, and I only had 2 accounts. And so it was very quickly before that ended up getting pared down to just me, right? Which is what most PR firms are when they're beginning. So now I'm finding myself on couches again. And at the age of 20, decided to try to take my life. They had to pump charcoal through my nostrils, and I will never forget the feeling of it going through cartilage in order to pull out all of the pills that I took and the alcohol. I remember sitting there and listening to the doctors talk around me, and I remember laying there and going, I have got to be here for a reason, because I've now tried to take myself out twice and have been unsuccessful both times. And so literally laying there in that hospital bed, I committed myself to figuring out, why am I here on earth? Back in June of 2016, on the cover of the New York Times International Edition, I saw this photo of this black man sitting to the right of Jack Daniel. I wasn't a Jack Daniel drinker. I had no idea who this black man was, but Jack Daniel is one of the most ubiquitous brands around the world. And so I knew what Jack looked like. And the headline said, Jack Daniels embraces a secret ingredient, help from a slave. But then when I began to dive into the story, something else began to be peeled back. That photo, taken around 1904, that photo was cropped. I got the original photo. That black man isn't just to the right of Jack Daniel. That black man was centered. So even though we don't have a photo of Nearest Green, the person who he ceded the center position to is Nearest's son, George Green. Nearest Green was not only the teacher and mentor of a young Jack Daniel, he was the first master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery. And Jack Daniel Distillery's original distillery number was distillery number 7. Nearest Green is the only known master distiller to ever operate at distillery number 7. I thought, if we can prove this, this changes everything. Because for African Americans for so long, the way that we have seen ourselves, or the way that we've been portrayed, is that these enslaved people came in and they were uneducated. That is not true. They were educated in their own country, in their own language. And so for my 40th birthday, I decided I wanted to go to Lynchburg, Tennessee. I want to see if what I think is true, which at the time is completely opposite of everything that was in social media, everything that was in the press at that time, was Jack is a slave owner, he stole the recipe, he hid the slave, they've tried to hide this for the last 150, 160 years, and I had a completely different theory. This is a story of love, honor, and respect, and it's an ally who wanted to make sure America could not wipe his friend away, his mentor away, this insignificant person away. One of the first people that we meet in the library, when I'm sitting there across from my husband doing research, is the second eldest living descendant of Jack Daniel, who offers to help, who literally pulls out her cell phone and gives me the name and number of Nearest Green's descendant who had been doing genealogy research for 30 years. And then she said, hey, you know that book that you read called Jack Daniel's Legacy? It's his biography written in 1967, height of the civil rights era. And you had this white reporter from Alabama comes up, interviews all of the people who knew Jack best. And they include Nearest and his boys more time than Jack's own family. In 1967, if you didn't want to credit a black man, you just left him out of the book. You left him out of the story. I shared this with Jack's descendant, and she's like, yes, we all grew up together. The story that's out there is not the true story. And so in that book, a lot of it takes place on this farm, this 313-acre farm right in the hills above Lynchburg, Tennessee. And she says to me, hey, you know that farm? It's for sale. At that time, I thought this could be a book, this could be a movie. Within a week, we had made an offer, it had been accepted on that property. And now all of a sudden we're going, well, what are we gonna do with this? The realtor who took us is a descendant of Jack Daniel, who took us to see the house. Turns out she had been in the family business her whole life. She had retired after 31 years as the head of whiskey operations for Jack Daniel. And she says, hey, I know you're gonna do a book and you're gonna do a movie, but if you ever decide to put his name on a bottle, I'll come out of retirement to make sure you get it right. The serendipity of everything that was happening, the only thing I could do was literally look to the heavens and go, all right, Jack and Nearest, what are y'all doing up there? What helped me to find my purpose, or allowed me to live so that I could live in my purpose, is the same reason we are talking about Nearest Green's legacy today. Because the only difference between Kentucky bourbon and Tennessee whiskey is what Nearest Green taught: charcoal filtration. Truly, it was the same
charcoal being utilized to purify my body after a second attempt at my life.
When we began this, we knew that there had never been an African American, a Black American, to succeed in founding and leading a spirit company in the history of American spirits. Now, mind you, American spirits have been in our country for over 400 years, and never once was there a Black American that had ever succeeded. We have a lot more money these days, and so our buying power is strong. And as our buying power has gone up, we've become the face of all these brands, but we didn't own it. And so the question was, why? And I didn't have that answer, but what I knew is this industry wasn't set up for me to succeed. So every time someone would give me advice, I would completely disregard it and do the opposite. So everyone told me, you should start in one state, build over the next 4 years or so in that one state, and then try to pick up the states that are adjoining it. I went to my chief business officer and I said, I want to be in all 50 states by the end of the first 2 years. Why? Because there's a reason that strategy has failed us. Even investors that I have brought in were like, Fawn, why would you invest so much in a distillery when none of these other bourbon brands are spending that kind of money? Put all that money into marketing. And I looked at it and said, the home place for Uncle Nearest Green Distillery is going to become the best marketing tool that we had. So I announced we're going to spend $50 million on building out a distillery. We weren't even 2 years old. People are like, this woman is crazy. Like, legitimately, this woman is crazy. She has no idea what she's doing. She's going to fail. And quite frankly, if you look at the moves I was making, I should have failed. But they were the right moves. And so we were able to transition very quickly every single time an obstacle had come our way because we owned the land, which meant we truly owned the brand. And so many of the bourbon companies that have come before us that sold, they didn't sell because those founders wanted to. They sold because they had to, because they ran out of enough money to be able to lay down enough bourbon. And for us, we began investing in assets so early. Bourbon goes up. So if I put it in at $750 in the barrel and I can sell it a few years later at $1,600, guess what? I can find investors to invest in that. I can find banks to invest in that because that's real property. This land is real property. These buildings that we have built, real property. Having a Black-owned company pass to the next generation, we've not done that. Every generation of Black Americans have started from scratch. Every single one. And now we have the opportunity to set the next generation up to not have to start from scratch. Diageo, Bacardi, Brown-Forman, LVMH, every single spirit conglomerate in this country, 90%, if not more, of the volume of alcohol sales, all come from these spirit conglomerates, all founded by white men, all still chaired by white men, led by. And so having the opportunity to build a spirit conglomerate, the very first ever to be built by a person who was not a white male, that can't happen with just Uncle Nearest. That has to be whiskey, there has to be cognac, there has to be tequila, there has to be vodka. And so Uncle Nearest is one pillar in this house that will pass to the next generation. This industry has an over 99% failure rate for new brands that launch. I'm one of the 1% to succeed. It would have been so easy to sell it for $1 billion and just go, I'm just gonna rest. But to know that my purpose is so much greater and that no matter how hard it was, there wasn't a price that they could buy this company for, and that I've stood my ground even when people were like, she has to have a number. She has to have a number. They've thrown every number at me and gotten the same response. No. That's what I'm most proud of.
We are here with Eva Mendes, actress, businesswoman, and so many other things. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Alex.
So you have done so many things in your career, from film to more traditional forms of entrepreneurship, but I want to start kind of at the beginning. You were born in Miami, grew up in LA.
Yeah.
What about being in those spaces and growing up in those places impacted you, your interests, and ultimately your career in Hollywood?
I don't know. I think it was my mom, really, who was very, very lower middle class background. My mom struggled a lot. She wasn't a single mom, but you know, she she could have had a little more help. And she always told me, she said, freedom is when you make your own money. She said, that's what you have to do. You have to figure out how to make your own money. And ever since I was little, I've just been hearing that. And I saw kind of the trap she was in a way, with my father. I love my dad too. I don't want to, but he was the breadwinner of the family, and her not being that for a while, she just always encouraged me to do that. And then she started working. So she spent my childhood with me. Thankfully, I was home with her a lot, but she would always do like odd, like really cool side hustle jobs. Like if it was like Easter, she'd make Easter baskets and sell them to like the block. And, she would do amazing little things like that. So she was always showing me like the value of working and having your hustle on, until she actually started, she started working at a bank when I was like 11. It's just been her support, I think.
You were discovered in your 20s and you started acting around that time. What can you tell me about those early experiences? Was acting something you had always wanted to do? Was it a surprise to you to get into that?
No, I really just, to sound crude, I just wanted to make money and be financially independent. And I realized at a certain point that certain people reacted to me in a certain way. And I was like, I was like a big enough of a ham to just go for anything. And I feel like I wasn't even aware that I could even make money as an actress, and then that failing was even an option. Like I didn't even care about it. I was just like, wait, is this an avenue I could potentially go down? And I did. I'm making it sound simple. It is not. It's very difficult. It's simple, but it's difficult. It's not easy. But anyway, I started studying acting, and then I started getting great opportunities. But I started creating a love of the craft, but I still never loved being in front of the camera. I loved studying about the background of the character and what they want in a scene and breaking down a scene. That's all still exciting to me. But once I got in front of the camera, to this day, it's like I never really loved anything.
Yeah. In your first, few roles and your first experiences being on set, being in front of the camera, what were some expectations versus reality of what it meant to be an actor?
I don't know. Funny, it's a great question, because I really just went back to one of my first big jobs, and I had to be like 26, and I was on a big set. And I thought, why are they just so nice to only the actors? I thought it was a kind of like bullshit. And there was kind of this this hierarchy on set that I never quite understood. So I thought it would be more of like a camaraderie, and it is, but I still don't like the kind of like, I don't know if hierarchy is the right word, but I just don't feel like, actors should be treated any more special or not. I guess it's, Anyway, so that was my big thing. I was like, why is everyone so nice to me? Why can I be like a little late, but that person can't be, or,
Yeah.
So
when you started acting and you were getting, many starring roles and you were really building your career, did you envision yourself acting for the rest of your life? Was it like a means to an end? Was it to get other opportunities? What was kind of your future goal when you really started thriving in this industry?
my future goal was to buy my mother a house, to buy myself a house once I started acting, and to just put money into the bank and it was one of those things that I had an overall idea, but I didn't share it with anybody. I didn't talk about my goals. I didn't talk about my objectives. I was just like, this is what I want to do, and I want to make sure that I not only knock on every door, but peek through every door, like bang down some doors. Like, what else can I do? I was never just like, oh, I'm this actress and I'm now this. No, I was just like, what else? What can I do? What,
Yeah.
I'm here now. So what else can I do? So I was always looking for opportunity.
What were some lessons that you learned in those early parts of your career that you feel like have served you through both acting, through things like design, through things like being a co-owner of a business?
Yeah.
What are some of those lessons that you feel like have served you?
Some of the lessons, first of all, a great lesson I learned early on was like nothing's personal. Like if they don't want you for the role, it's not that they don't want you for it. You're not right for it. There's so many other there's so many variables that go into like hiring somebody for a role. And at first, the first couple of years, I was young and I took it very personally. And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I can't drive myself crazy. And I have to just know that it's not personal. So that really freed me because once I felt like it's not personal, that's when I didn't have a fear of failing. And I don't have a fear of failing. I have a fear of not trying. And that's my fear. It's like, I hate regret. I'd rather sit and oh, well, that didn't work out than I wonder if that would have worked out.
You have had success in many genres in the acting space. What would you say has been your favorite role that you have ever played?
Working with Ryan Gosling as an actor, when we worked together, he was just so giving as an actor, and I realized that if you work with with such a great talent, that it gave me less to do in a way. I was so present. I've never been more present in a role than that role.
What would you say has been your most challenging role that you've played?
The roles I found most challenging was when I was involved in a very male heavy cast. I found that to be challenging because I'm such a girl's girl, and I need that female energy around me. So those were the most challenging ones. It really wasn't about what I was doing in a scene. It was more about who I was surrounded with. Because I walk away from a film or a project having my own experiences of it, right? I was 6 months and, wherever I was. And so I see the film as its own thing. And then I have my own memory of it, experience of it. So that's obviously invaluable. So it hasn't always been as pleasant as I've wanted it to be, but I've been really lucky that I haven't had it bad. I haven't had it in that way. I just need women around me. So
yeah, it makes a big difference who you're surrounded by on the day to day.
Yes, when I'm in a vulnerable position, whether it's getting dressed in costume or I'm hair and makeup, I'm just women around.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I want to ask about your decision to step away from Hollywood and from the acting industry. You played your last role in 2014. When you decided to take a break, was that an intentional decision to stop for an extended period of time? Was it going to be just a short break? Where was your mind when you decided to take a step back?
I don't really remember exactly where it was, but I do feel like that I got pregnant around that time. My ambition was still there. It just was suddenly directed towards something else. Oh my gosh, this is where all my focus became my home. It was just my kids, Ryan, the home. And just that's where I derived my joy. And it also is where, I just naturally went into. So that's when I started searching for things I could do really from home. And this is where I think my mom's early years of hustling, making the Easter baskets for everybody, or, decorating tiny Christmas trees to sell around the block. I think that's where I just started doing my version of that. And it was before remote, before Zooms or anything like that. But I was now looking back, especially looking back now, that's when I started designing for New York and Company, which was really just a great time. I did that for about 7 years and through my 2 pregnancies. And that was incredible. I would design from home, be on the, computer, meet up every, a few days a month. And it was just a really ideal job for me because I stayed creative and I love connecting with women. I love it. It's just making something that a woman can enjoy, specifically a woman, a dress, a pantsuit, whatever it is. I was really fulfilled while I was doing that.
Hmm. I want to talk a bit about your experience as a mother and kind of how you found those other creative outlets or other things that you became passionate about. I heard in another interview you mentioned that becoming a mother was the most creative thing that you had ever done. Can you
Yeah.
talk a bit about that? I think that's such a new and interesting concept. I think that many people don't
Thanks.
think about motherhood as being creative, but you have to be. So I'd love to know more about that experience.
It's so creative. It's literally the most creative thing you could do. You're creating a life. And it doesn't stop with just creating the life and then they're here. It's like every day you create. You create together, you create for them, whether it's what you're going to make them to eat, whether it's how you're going to entertain them or, while you're working and, what you're going to do. And then obviously those are the little things. And then it's like, well, creating a life together. I also think that, relationships, I mean, that's just like, it's so beautiful to be able to create with a partner, I find the whole process just so innately creative.
Hmm. And I love too that you mentioned that you really got inspired and interested in what you were doing around the house, which is very related to the company that you are now co-owner of,
Yes.
Skura Style.
Yes.
Walk me through your decision to join the cleaning industry and to be part of a product company. When I was talking with the co-founders, they mentioned that you got in touch with them after being a customer yourself. So I'd love to know more about why you decided to reach out and what made you interested in joining this company in the first place.
Yeah, well, first of all, I love the product. I found a product that I love, which is their Fade to Change sponge. Cleaning for me and for my family, my sisters, my mom, it's not just cleaning. It's a really it's an emotional bonding experience. Like my mother will come to my house till this day. She can barely walk. She goes straight to the sink, bless her heart. And even if there's like one cup, she'll start, And I didn't know if that was a Cuban thing or a Latin thing. I wasn't sure, but it's just such a thing for us. And we bond over it, especially in the kitchen, especially doing the dishes. During the pandemic, I was probably like most people going crazy and I was like washing my fruit, which I'm sure I did more harm than good. But I was going through a bunch of different cleaning products and I came across this sponge, this Skura style sponge. And I was like, oh, that's cool for a sponge. It just looked different. It wasn't like some horrible looking thing. It was pretty. So that caught my eye because I love design and I love anything. I love making anything beautiful. But yeah, I started using it and I loved it. So I got in contact with the founders and I loved their story. They've been best friends, Linda and Allison. I'm sure they told you been best friends since they've been kids. They're still best friends. Their kids are the same age. I mean, they're BFF dreams. And I really feel like I connected with them, obviously. And I just thought, there's something here. There's something. I love this product, and I see something here. I don't know. I just saw. I'm trying to describe what it is, but it's that feeling of I'm not sure what it is, but let's keep in touch. And then it just kind of progressed. And it just became obvious that I was like, I have so many ideas. I love this product. And, I started realizing that I was talking about product development and, all these different things and marketing. And I was like, okay, let's do this. I need to be involved. And again, two women. So I felt very, very comfortable.
That's what I was going to ask you. They are two female co-founders, and speaking, from your acting experience, really loving being involved in female-led sets or, those sorts of things. How do you describe your relationship with the two of them and with the Skura team? What does that female founder space mean to you?
Female founder space. It is just, not only is it fun, because it's just fun. I love, connecting to that with them and talking, but it's the little things. Like when I make a Zoom and I'm a few minutes late, but I'm calling them from my mobile office in my car, and I just have and my kids in class and I'm trying to make it happen and I'm a disaster, but I know what I have, I did the work. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to explain, but it's those moments where I become very like frazzled and really stressed out, and, the kid and here and this and then the other, and they're just like, totally get it. There's no question. There's no doubt on their end that, it's just like, wow, to have to explain yourself. I don't know. I feel like that's great. They know exactly what I'm talking about when I was like, or like all I have to say is, hey guys, my little one's sick right now, and they're just like, oh my God, do we not? We know about that, and those things make for a more supportive workplace.
Definitely.
I'm the kind of person that I need to feel supported or through love, or else I tend to like, I don't know. Some people like a great challenge, and I like a challenge, of course, but I still need it rooted in like love and support, if that makes
It totally
sense.
does, yeah. From a product development side of things, what makes Gura so different from what exists on the market today? I mean, you mentioned earlier that design is something that most sponges aren't pretty, but what
Yes.
else makes these products so special?
Well, specifically the sponge, there's nothing like it. The fade to change technology is just, it's incredible. The fact that we have, you know, the actual monogram fade as the sponge reaches its limit, lets you know that, okay, it's time to throw out and change out your sponge, because, sponges are 200,000 times dirtier than our toilet seats. I'm sure you've heard that. Everyone's heard that. And it's true, and it's obviously disgusting. So you're cleaning with something filthy. So anyway, it lets you know, it does the thinking for you. It lets you know when it's time to throw out. So that to me was so genius, and I was that was huge for me. And again, I love beautiful things. So the fact that it was, something pretty and it wasn't your usual, like, it's not your mama sponge, And then also, obviously loving the other products, the scouring pad, the drying towel. I'm big with drying towels because I still lay out my towel. Oh, I only do dishes by hand, by the way. I have the dishwasher. I could store toilet paper in there. I never use it. Anyway, I fell in love with all the products, and I saw so much potential. And again, trying to link fashion, style, beauty, color, and trying to elevate the kitchen and bring joy, because that's a place where I derive so much joy from. So much joy. Just when my kitchen is clean, when my sink is clean, there's something, I don't know, there's got to be other people. It sounds like you feel this too. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's just,
Can breathe.
you can breathe and it feels so good. Of course, when my house is clean, and I just get so much joy from it. So I have such an emotional connection to the product, and the product is just a superior product than what's on the market today. The other thing that I found really exciting was that right now, before us, there hasn't been a woman in the aisle. There's Mr. Clean and there's Sponge Daddy. And I'm just like, how has it gone on this long that there hasn't been a woman in the aisle? So that also was a huge driving force. I was like, I've got to be a part of this and take this next level.
That is super special. You came on as a co-owner in 2022, and now in your, relationship with the co-founders, what really is your role in the company? What are the things that you are offering? Why were you a good fit for them as they were for you?
My role in the company, it varies, but mostly it's about product development, connecting to the customer, really listening to the customer, bringing in my love of design, bringing in my love of trying to elevate spaces. And, I feel like it's one of those things, like I feel like I'm part of a Broadway show where it's anything. Like sometimes if you're part of a cast or part of a show, whether you need to get someone coffee or you need to actually like help paint something, like that's what I feel like, in this beautiful collaboration, because we're such a small company and we kind of like do it all. And I find that really exciting because we're in it and we're still building it, which is really, really fun.
Yeah. I know that you have a collection coming out with the company that you designed yourself. Can you walk me through that process a bit? What was the behind the scenes of coming up with that idea and then really bringing it into tangible products?
Well, I love color. I love color. I love pattern. And, I have these beautiful images of Cuba in my house. I'm Cuban. I'm first generation. My parents are Cuban. And I have these beautiful images of the buildings. And I know it's a bittersweet thing because the conditions in Cuba are just, obviously won't go into that, but there is a beauty in the colors. And I just have these images in my head and I see them around, and I was just like, I need a color palette. I need something that reflects what brings me joy. And the colors in and the design in my new collection is exactly that. It's exactly what brings me joy, and things that I have in my home, colors. And there's a specific design I found just very, I don't know, beautiful. And I was like, yeah, I want to make a beautiful sponge. Why not? Like, if you can make a sponge beautiful, I think, everything else, I don't know.
Elevates the whole kitchen then.
It does. And I like to keep my sponge out. I'm not one, I don't hide her. I don't put her anywhere else. So I don't know. I like to see her because she's always there for me.
Yeah, definitely. Who are you trying to reach with this brand? Is it moms that are at home cleaning? Is it a different demographic? Who are you really trying to target with these products?
I don't know who I'm trying to target because in that sense, I'm not going after anyone specifically or any demo. I just feel like if you have a home, if you have an apartment, whether it's a studio apartment, it's your first thing, it's one room, you've got to do the dishes. If you're not doing them, who's doing them for you? And so who's ever doing the dishes needs this product. So it's one of those things that's it's an everybody thing. So
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of fun also just reading the reviews. That's been really interesting for me because I've never read reviews before. And although I do read some of my comments on social media and stuff, it's different because you're kind of trained not to. But with reviews, with anything having to do with Skira style, it's been really connective,
How do you determine, based on those reviews, what's going to be next for the company? I know you guys are talking about other products that are coming up and, different expansions and many facets of the brand. How much do those comments and the, customer reviews and the customer engagement, how much does that impact what's next for you guys and the company?
Customer reviews are everything for me. And I read their comments. I read what they want. I read what they don't like. I love hearing how I can improve upon something, how it's actually getting to you, the box it's getting to you, and whatever it is. I love reading things that people would like improved or that they need. So that means it's pretty amazing to have just your customer right there asking you, because obviously you want to make them happy. I want to make them happy. I'm excited about this product. It brings me joy. So it's like, yes, please get it. I'll get so happy off a review. It can really put me in a really great mood. And we win all these really super fun awards and stuff like that. And I joke around where it's that's winning a good housekeeping award is my version of the Oscar, So
Definitely.
it's really fun.
What is next for the company? I know you guys have some retail expansion coming up. What can you tell us about where we're going to be able to find Skira style and what else is on the horizon for the brand?
Well, we're going to be in selected stores at Target very soon, and then we're deciding on some other big box retailers. It's just everything and the kitchen sink, basically. Yeah.
Definitely. My last question for you is, as a mother, an actress, a company co-owner, you are impacting so many people, but what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, shit. I haven't really thought about it because hopefully by doing right by my family and working as hard as I can to be the best mom I could be, the best, partner, the best daughter. I kind of try my best at everything and then let the chips fall as they may. The legacy chips fall as they may.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting about all this with me today.
Thanks,
I really appreciate
Alex.
you taking the time to
It's
chat.
really fun.
Jack's time in the military really set the foundation of our culture. because he was flying off aircraft carriers. That was dangerous. They didn't have radars. It was about mission, discipline, teamwork. You didn't know if you were coming back. And so those philosophies in the military help shape the way we think about the business today. And what's so important for us in moving forward is that we recognize our history, our legacy, what has made us so successful, and we want to bring that into the future.
Chrissy Taylor is the third generation of her family to run car rental giant Enterprise Mobility, formerly known as Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which her grandfather Jack Taylor founded nearly 70 years ago, and her father Andy Taylor ran for nearly 2 decades. Chrissy took over as CEO in January 2020 after starting, at the bottom at a car rental branch in 2000 and working her way up through the company over nearly 2 decades.
So I started my career in 1995 as an intern during my freshman year in college at the St. Louis group. And it was a great entry into the business and into the operations. I loved it so much, I became a full-time management trainee in 2000. And from there, worked my way up to a branch manager. And then from there, I had 17 different roles within the company, moving around, understanding how big we were, what different departments were. And then I took an opportunity over in our international department. And so I worked internationally for 3 years and then came back. I ran North America and then eventually became CEO in 2020. I love the experience of being in the management training program because you're really learning how to run your own business. You are being your own entrepreneur and you are developing marketing plans. You are driving customer service. And so it really is getting your MBA and running your own business when you become a branch manager. And so the management training is a critical piece of the puzzle when we think about the growth at Enterprise Mobility.
Chrissy's dad, who had served as CEO for nearly 2 decades, decided that he was ready to move on and transition into the executive chairman role, which he still holds today, in 2013. And at that point, Chrissy had been working her way up through the ranks, and he kind of knew that she was the logical successor, but she was still very young at that point. So instead of, forcing it and making her CEO maybe before she was ready, they actually tapped the first non-family CEO, a woman by the name of Pam Nicholson, who wasn't family, but she was like family. She had joined Enterprise right out of college and been there for 30, 40 years. So she served as CEO for that sort of 7-year gap between when Andy stepped aside in 2013 and Chrissy became CEO in 2020. From everything I've seen, it seems like it was a smart decision that really benefited the company.
Pam has always been a huge supporter of mine, a mentor, a trusted friend, and she taught me how to operate the business. We were going to Europe. We needed to make sure that our European team was successful in any country that we operated in. We needed to make sure that we were growing the business, we were promoting our employees, they had the tools to be successful, and then we were providing great customer service. And so Pam was a true illustration of our 4 core areas and driving the business forward. Our company is successful because we are privately held, multi-generation, and we invest for the long haul.
Late last year, Chrissy rebranded the company, which had been known as Enterprise Holdings previously, to Enterprise Mobility. And the reason, as she explains it, for that was, less to signal major changes to the business that were coming imminently, and more so to reflect the fact that they have over time evolved to do a lot more than people think of when they think of enterprise. Traditional car rental we estimate accounts for about 2/3 of their sales, but the company does a lot of other things accounting for that other 1/3 of sales. They rent trucks, they sell and lease cars, they even have, a software like Integral, which is used by insurance companies and parts makers and auto shops to really streamline the post-accident communication process. Even among private companies, Enterprise really stands out in terms of, the Taylor family's just really obsession with reinvesting in the business over and over and over again.
We changed the company name to Enterprise Mobility because it better describes who we are and what we do. So Jack Taylor, my grandfather, founded the company in 1957 with 7 cars as a leasing business, and today we have 9 distinct mobility lines. We're in over 90 countries around the world, and we have 90,000 amazing employees. And so we have grown, we have evolved, and so Enterprise Mobility better tells the story of who we are and what we do, and that positions us for the future.
They've actually taken a very cautious approach to EVs relative to some of their peers, which has turned out to be prudent, as Hertz in particular has found that racing into EVs was maybe not, they sort of got ahead of customer demand there. Chrissy is, through their venture arm, Enterprise Mobility Ventures, really pushing her team to look at what's out there. And so they're investing in companies that may play a role in the future of the mobility space. As it relates to EVs, they're investing in companies that work on electric charging stations. They have investments in companies that are doing work on autonomous driving. And then they're looking, even further out and starting to think about what might happen with things like nuclear fission and hydrogen, and who are the companies in that space that would make sense to partner with.
We are prepared for EV, we could be prepared for autonomous vehicle, whatever technology comes, we really want to make sure that we're putting the customer at the center of all of that and grow our core businesses. That's when we're successful, and that's what we've done for over 65 years.
Chrissy started in January 2020. By mid-March, COVID had hit in full force. It was unlike anything the car rental industry had ever faced. What we heard was that she's just really a natural leader and grabbed the bull by the horns, and I think that made a huge difference. She had to make some tough decisions. There just simply weren't enough cars, so they had to make the decision to close down a bunch of their retail branches to focus on their business-to-business customers, which account for an estimated 2/3 of their sales. Those choices, while hard, really benefited the company in helping them get through the pandemic. Coming out of COVID in 2023, they, reported 2 consecutive years of record revenue. Hertz went bankrupt during COVID, and Avis did a little better, but their credit rating was downgraded, and Enterprise managed to maintain their balance sheet strength and their credit ratings, which I think says a lot.
One of the things I learned very quickly becoming CEO in January 2020 was that I cannot over-communicate to the team. Over-communication, whether in times of challenge, concern, issue, and over-communication when we're in times of good and thanking people and recognizing people, you've got to do that. You have to do that. And so my number one lesson that I have learned since being CEO in 2020 was I cannot over-communicate, and I enjoy talking to our team, and it's the right thing to do.
So the Taylor family, they have a pair of charitable foundations which together have given away more than $1 billion to date. One is the Enterprise Mobility Foundation, which really serves all of the global communities that the business, and then there's the family's Crawford Taylor Foundation, which is St. Louis focused. And so it's, focused on a bunch of different areas, but it all gets at, revitalizing St. Louis.
Another one of our founding philosophies is give back to the communities that have made us so successful. We brought an MLS team, City, SC, into St. Louis, and the community totally stepped up. Making sure we're giving back to the communities that have made us so successful falls right in line with our values.
We are here today with Emma Chamberlain, the co-founder of Chamberlain Coffee. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So you are the co-founder of Chamberlain Coffee, but you're also many, many other things. Your career spans from traveling for things like fashion weeks to creating your own independent content to building this company. It's a pretty non-traditional career, especially for someone of 22 years old. So how, when you were growing up, did you envision what a career would look like for you? Did it look like this?
It definitely did not look like this. I think it's very easy to sort of fall into a traditional sort of plan. And so, I imagined myself going to college for at least 4 years. It was a goal for me to go to a really good school and hopefully get, some sort of scholarship maybe. Like that was a huge, huge focus for me. And then, I had a few job interests. I was really interested in math and science. So I was considering, I actually wanted to be an anesthesiologist for a little bit because I was like a little too young to understand that that's a really complicated job. And I just saw that it made a lot of money and that it was math and science related. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll do that.
Had you ever been put under anesthesia before?
Yes, and that's actually one of the other reasons why I kind of wanted to do it, because my anesthesiologist gave me such a great experience. He played a music video for me while I was going under, and then I woke up and it was like nothing ever happened, and he really calmed my anxiety as an anxious person. So I was very grateful for him. But again, I'm kind of glad I didn't do that. I don't know how that would have worked out for me.
In your early days creating YouTube videos, you really kind of stumbled upon editing and shooting style that really ultimately skyrocketed your success. Walk me through those early days and kind of finding your niche on such a saturated and growing platform at the time.
So I started, as most people start with anything, mimicking what was out there, because I think that's how you learn. If you've never done something before, the best thing you can do is copy others. So I started out by definitely copying. I was doing what was popular for people my age, similar to me, which was a lot of, makeup, fashion, beauty related content, pretty prim and proper, very, nice setup, nice background, the whole thing. And, maybe a more sort of personality wise, maybe a bit more refined in a way, right? And I mimicked that for a while. And then, I made it a goal to make a video every day during the summer, because I started during the summer. And when you're doing something as consistently as every day, you naturally get bored of things and want to start trying new things. So I owe my fast evolution to that let me do it every day sort of goal. And I, very quickly became bored of that thing. Also realized that wasn't me. It works for other people, it just doesn't work for me. So then I naturally started vlogging and just filming my everyday. And I ended up loving that the most. And then again, when you're doing something every day, it evolves. So very quickly, I was like, well, I'm bored of this vlogging, this way of vlogging. Let me, build it up. And my dad told me from the day that I started my channel that I need to be fully myself. And I hadn't been in the very beginning. This all happened in the span of 2 months, by the way, but he was like, you need to be yourself. And I really struggled with that for the first month, but very quickly I became comfortable and was able to do that because I was just forcing myself to dive in head first and just get good at it, really. And it became this goal of making a video that's as entertaining as possible, but also as me as possible. And also as funny as possible. I wanted it to be funny at the time. That was like my main goal. But it became this sort of art form for me. Like, how can I make the mundane, me being mundane, the subject matter being mundane, as interesting as possible? And then that has sort of followed me ever since.
Definitely. Throughout that journey, you started it in high school. You've had quite the change of, your character online, the way that you're, performing online, the different types of content, your style evolution. How do you describe the different eras of Emma Chamberlain?
Yes. So I would say the very beginning is like Emma being a YouTuber. I didn't fit quite right there. So then it became Emma being her wild teenage self, honestly, for many years. Like, just playing. It was like Emma's playing. She's having fun. The videos are like super energetic. I had a lot of energy naturally at that time. That's just who I was. So these videos were very energetic. And then I think it's sort of transitioned to like, I sort of had maybe an existential crisis, which was a more quiet, more maybe aesthetically driven sort of video style, less personality. I was going through a personality shift myself, so it was very hard for me to figure out, okay, what am I putting out there? So that was more of a quieter time. I call that the quiet time. And then I would say where I'm at now is like very much sort of a mix of the two, actually. Like, there's still, the personality's coming back. I'm feeling like, okay, I know who I am as an adult now. I can show myself again, and that feels comfortable. But, as an adult, I'm more aesthetically driven than I was as a kid. So like the videos, I want them to look cool too, like, and look nice. But now YouTube is really fun for me again too, because I think you go through a weird, when something becomes your job, your relationship with it changes. So I think now I'm enjoying it again, and I don't have as much time to do it as I wish I did. But that time will come later, and I can play around even more again later.
I know in other interviews and in speaking with other people, you've talked a lot about your intuition guiding you, and that, in many ways, it told you to step back for a while from YouTube.
Yeah.
Are you starting to move back in that direction again? How are you kind of managing where your like heart and soul is telling you to go next?
Yes, my heart and soul is loving YouTube again. Like I'm ready to be back. I like feel ready to be back. I think the main reason for that is, well, two main reasons. Number one, because I think I've been able to sort of develop my personality as an adult off screen. It's very hard to develop your personality when you're on camera every day. I don't know what it is, but it can stunt growth weirdly. And I felt that intuitively. And I was like, I need to transition from being a teenager to being an adult by myself for a minute. Like, I have to, because I only know how to be on camera as a teenager. I don't know who I am when the camera's off, so I had to shut the camera off. I've been able to develop that. And now, it's natural for me again to be on camera. But on top of that, I've been able to diversify sort of my businesses and things like that so that I have a bit more space to change myself on YouTube. It's very scary to change something when it's your job and it's working.
Yeah.
And so, because I've diversified now, if I want to change things up on YouTube, I'm not afraid, because that is not my job anymore, technically, right? So it's given me so much freedom, and it's allowing me to re-enter into it, which I've not even nearly re-entered it to the level that I plan to, but it's like I am able to play there. But also, I think with me and YouTube, like I'm more in the mood to make longer videos that, maybe I only upload every once in a while. Like, that's what I'm more interested in. You can't do that if it's your job. Mm-hmm. So there are so many good things happening with my relationship with YouTube that just took time to figure out. And it was hard because I kept trying to put myself back into it too soon, but intuitively and emotionally, I'm loving it again. And my relationship with it is very healthy.
Yeah, well, I'm sure many people will be excited to hear that. But in terms of your job today, what do you then consider it? What are you relying on to ensure that the YouTube can be something that's for, a passion project or something you just love to do?
Yes, there are a few things that don't contribute to like paying the bills, right? But maybe there's longer term goals with them. Like, I think YouTube is absolutely that. Even Chamberlain Coffee is that. I'm putting all of the money back into that business right now. And so I'm not, that is for now, a passion project, really. I mean, it's a business, but it can't, I'm fortunate that it gets to be a passion project because I'm not relying on that for my income. Right now, my podcast has become sort of my, what I would say is my traditional like job, you know, like that's my job, but also, you know, brand partnerships as well. And I've really just loved the way that I've been able to do brand partnerships more recently because they feel much more like collaborations now more than ever. I enjoy the creative side of working with brands and marketing brands. Like I love that. And so, you know, I do that a lot with Chamberlain Coffee, but I also do that a lot with other brands as well. You know, figuring out creative ways and intriguing ways to market product. That passion, it was unexpected, but has become something that I love.
I definitely want to ask about that because I think that the way that you've worked with brands like Levi's, Aritzia, you know, Louis Vuitton, all these kind of fashion houses that have their own marketing teams, their own kind of ideas of where they want to take their campaigns and their partnerships and things like that. What is your role when you come into partnerships like that? How do you ensure that anything that you're doing is still really, you know, keyed in on like what the Emma Chamberlain brand is, even though it is partnering with these other major companies?
I think it's a balance because, you know, brands have their own sort of vision and I absolutely respect that. You're taking two identities, right? I mean, I think it's a little different because one is sort of a brand identity and one is sort of a personal identity. But, you know, there's two forces here and it's finding a brand who's willing to do a few things. Number one, create something that feels us. But number two, them allow me to, when it comes to like my social media, for example, or the content that I'm putting out into the world from my hands, right? That feels me ultimately because I don't feel comfortable putting something out that doesn't feel like me. But then at the same time, I also do that for them. So there are times when I'm a canvas for them, right? And that's sort of this compromise that we are not even compromise, but that's sort of a part of the collaboration. Both parties get to be themselves with the other present, but then also there's something that's us too. And maybe that's like the main campaign that goes out into the world. Maybe that's, you know, a video that we make for their channel or something. It's like everybody gets what they want and what they need. It's complicated, but it is worth it because I think that it creates the most intriguing, exciting sort of content at the end of the day.
Definitely. Building your own brand then, Chamberlain Coffee, I'm sure that's a different experience coming into, you know, whether it's a marketing campaign or a social media post or all the you know, packaging of the coffee and all those sorts of things. Why do you think you were the right person to start this brand? Obviously, you know, you had a lot of coffee in your YouTube videos. You talked about a lot. It was a big part of your life. But taking that from, you know, a video that you share with people online to a consumer product is a pretty big jump. So why were you the right person to create a consumer product surrounding coffee?
Well, I think for one, you know, I have built a level of trust with my personal audience around coffee because for years, not only was it a huge topic of my videos just naturally, but also I've recommended coffee places. I've recommended coffee products. And I think, you know, there's a level of trust with me and my taste for coffee, for one. But for two, I've always been obsessed with coffee as a product from, you know, cafe culture to also other caffeinated beverages. That has always been such a special thing to me. And it's always been a passion for me since before I started my YouTube. And I think when it comes to creating a brand, I'm a home barista just like the rest of us in a way. And what was inspiring to me was like, how can I create a brand that feels bright, feels fun, feels playful, feels inviting? And also when it comes to even developing the blends, creating something for my generation, also creating something that's approachable, but also something that feels like it's for everyone in a way, like even flavor profile wise.
Coming from the creative side of things, so having that experience in YouTube and content creation and marketing and branding and the ways that you did, what were the steps that you had to take to ensure that you did have people who were qualified to like allow you to create a product that people would consume? Because there are so many regulations that come with that. Many steps through the process, whether it is like ingredients, even manufacturing and packaging. Yeah. What were the steps that you had to take to build a team that you could really come together to build a product like this?
Yes. Well, I think it is really filling the gaps. Like when, I have maybe the creative vision, I have maybe the overall vision, but I can't do it all. As you're building the business, you're slowly but surely, almost like chaotically figuring out what you need next, like, okay, the first step was finding a company that already exists that could help to create basically coffee pros who can roast the beans in the exact way that I want them so that it can taste exactly how I want it to taste. And so it was finding that. And then it was working with investors so that we had the money to eventually rebrand. And then when we were rebranding, it's finding, creative illustrators and people like that to come in and build it out. And then from there, it's been like, okay, now we need a CEO. Okay, who's that going to be? And it's interviewing as many people as you possibly can until you feel it in your heart, like they get it.
So are you interviewing everybody that comes through the company? And besides that, like what else does your day-to-day entail with Chamberlain Coffee?
Yes, I'm in a lot of the interviews. A lot of times it is really challenging because, I have so many, at this point, pieces of my business that I have to manage, and there are some that I need to be more involved in than others. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to like interviewing, for example, a lot of times the beginning stages of interviews, for example, those will happen with the team that I've already built out. Like I'm lucky that now we have that built out so that when I'm in the interview and I'm really, making the big choices, it's instead of being 15 people, it's 2, it's 3. When it comes to the day-to-day, it's a lot of approvals. It's a lot of things coming in from the team that we've built, whether it's like creative concepts for shoots or for campaigns or for product or for, whatever it may be. And comes to me, I send my notes, I maybe send a completely new idea. I'm like, no, it's this actually. And then it's a back and forth like that a lot of times. And what's interesting is, I'm obsessed with retail strategy. Like I love that journey as well.
Well, I'm excited to hear that you are passionate about the retail strategy because that is something I want to talk about too. Moving into places like Walmart, Whole Foods, you are in multiple stores right now. Why was that something that you guys wanted to prioritize, and what has that process been like, moving, like you said, from just D2C to these multiple different avenues now?
D2C businesses for a long time, it was almost like the trend, right? Like sort of really leaning into social media marketing and really leaning into D2C. That was sort of the structure of the moment, especially like, what was it? During COVID, I would say for sure that was what it was. And then, coming out of COVID, it was like, okay, what do we do now? Do we want to keep that? Or do we want to play a bit? Do we want to get into the real world? And I think, are we ever going to stop shopping in store? I don't think so. I love going to the store. I mean, maybe one day it will completely not exist. We'll never go to a grocery store again. But I think that experience cannot be ignored even during, this very digital time that we're living in. Like we ultimately decided that we can't overlook retail. On top of that, we also, we're excited about developing something sort of ready to drink. That was always in our head, and we're like, okay, excited about doing that. Not sure exactly what that would look like for a while. It was like, okay, do we want it to be exactly my recipe? Do we want it to be, something else? What is that? Is it just like a really good black coffee? Like, what is it? But then we had some interest from retailers asking us, do you have a ready to drink beverage? And then it was like, okay, you know what? This has all been in our head festering. And now the opportunity's here. This is something that's desirable. So we were like, okay, this is great. Let's do this. Going into ready to drink, that's a different category. It's also a category where there's some gaps, kind of for a reason, because it's a very challenging category to get right. but it's been good because we've learned a lot, and we love, and we're so proud of what we have out there now.
I know that you have some ready to drink stuff coming with Target that'll be
Yes.
launching soon. Besides that, what else is Chamberlain Coffee working on right now in terms of like what you're building for the future? I know you have some partnerships coming up for events in
Yes.
California and some other,
Yes.
campaigns and collections. So walk me through like where your sights are set for the next like 6 to 12 months.
Yes, we have some really fun collaborations with brands that have a similar sort of DNA to us. Like 818 is a great example. Base is a great example where, they're both sort of brands that were started by other girlies in this industry, which is so cool. Also two businesses that I really admire, like, specifically with 818, like it's like it has this sort of like young and fun sort of feel, but it's also very chic and elevated at the same time. And then there's Base, that genius, innovators in the luggage space, like genuinely. They're both brands that I respect and I admire. And so it's exciting to get to work with them and do something with them because it's like, let's just lift each other up. That always feels good. In general, we're just excited about, various ways that we can pop up in as many places as possible and just kind of get people trying the product. When it comes to what we're developing, I mean, I think actually a lot of my focus right now is like refining what we have, weirdly enough. I mean, we've experimented a lot, and I think we figured out what works, what doesn't work. And I think we want to go back in and refine and perfect. I think especially what's exciting is, with the ready to drink lattes, like coming out with new flavors, like that's a part of sort of refining. It's like adding more flavors, even like little things like refining the packaging, refining the branding, like those can often get overlooked when you're trying to scale a business. You're like, well, I just need to come out with this new product that's going to be huge and it's going to be, and that's not always what it is. There are things to refine. So I think we're in a refining phase right now more than ever. And just also like coming into ourselves as a brand.
Knowing the challenges that you've gone through, but also, the exciting parts of building the brand, if you could tell yourself something the day before you started the company, what would it be?
I would tell myself that I'm going to need to be patient because things take so long. I would also tell myself it's not always going to be done perfectly the first time. It's just not. It is just not. Like we give individuals grace. You know what I mean? We give individuals grace. Like it's not always, but we try to, right? Give other human beings the space to make mistakes. But when it comes to a business, arguably rightfully so, we give much less grace. It's like, you didn't get it right the first time? Okay, peace. And understandably so, because you're paying money for a product and you want it to be done right the first time. You pay money for, an experience, you want it to be perfect. That even comes from the inside as well, where I'm like, why didn't this product do well? Like I thought this product was gonna do well. Like, why didn't this product do well? When you open it up, it's a bunch of individuals who really care most of the time about the integrity of the brand, things being done right, the customer having a phenomenal experience. Like that's what we all want for the most part. And I think if I could have told myself anything, it would have been, these are all humans here. And, not everything's going to be perfect. We're not a machine. It might look like a machine. It might sort of feel like a machine, but it's not. It's absolutely not. And I think having grace, mainly from the inside, is so key. And being patient with myself too. Like I might have an idea and we do it and it sucks and it's not good. It doesn't work, but that's okay. You can't have ego in it either, which luckily that's one thing I never did. I think I've always leaned closer to imposter syndrome than, ego, but I've definitely seen it as a machine and I've had to grow out of that for sure.
My last question for you, if you have some parting words to tell the audience, something that they might not know about you. I know it might be difficult because you share a lot of yourself online with the world. What is one thing that you wish people knew about you that they don't?
I think something that's interesting about me that is not maybe shown as often is how, like, I really do have this sort of bizarrely out of character sort of passion for business in a weird way. Like it doesn't make sense because all other facets of my personality could not be more the opposite. Like I've been known for everything but what we consider to be founding a brand, marketing a brand, running a business. Like nobody would have predicted this. Let's just say that. Not even myself. It happened almost on accident in a way, but I do have a passion for that, though my personality is still the same. Nobody's looking at me and saying, well, that's a businesswoman. Like when they talk to me, it's like, of course not. That's just not my personality. There is a personality, a stereotype that we associate with that. I just don't have that. I never will. And I don't have that now because of this sort of newfound passion in this experience. But like that's genuinely a passion for me. And I think most people, maybe people wouldn't know that. It's very common to see, the career trajectory that I've had. A lot of people start businesses who start in maybe entertainment and then start a business. It's very common. And there is sort of a stigma around it, like, well, it doesn't mean that you're passionate about the business. I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't know where, but it's the passion is there. I really am genuinely passionate about the journey of building a business in every single little corner of that.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me about all of this. I'm super excited to see
Thank
where the
you.
brand and your career goes, and to see you on YouTube again soon, more regularly. I know you've been on a little,
Thank you.
but thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you.
Money on its own is not the most important thing, but money is the foundation of all of the things that are important.
Behind every great story of business success, there is one person, one supporter, mentor, investor, or even customer, without whom that success story might not exist. Bill Gates has Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had legendary investor Benjamin Graham. And Christina Lewis has Reginald Lewis, her late father and the man who was, in the early 90s, the first Black man to own a billion-dollar business. Christina Lewis likes to describe herself as a philanthropreneur, a perfect blend of a for-profit entrepreneur and a mission-oriented philanthropist. It's a mindset she inherited from her father. He died an untimely death in 1993 when Christina was just 12 years old. While most people can say that a parent is the one who changed everything for them, Christina's story is a little different. In this season of her life, which finds her as the founder of a wealth management company for women and people of color, she sees all the ways in which her father and his teachings guide her everyday decisions.
Christina Lewis, you are a philanthropreneur. You have founded several organizations to help Black people, Black families, promote Black wealth. Thank you for sitting down with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we are all products of our families, quite literally, biologically. But this series is called The One Who Changed Everything.
Yes.
The people without whom we would not be sitting in these seats. So please tell us who your one is.
Yeah, so my one is my dad. His name was Reginald Lewis. He was the first Black person to own a billion-dollar company here in the United States. And he has a really interesting, inspiring, and iconic story. He was born in 1942 in segregated Baltimore. At the end of his life, he was the richest Black man in America. And his death at the height of his powers is a tragedy that also, of course, really influenced me as well.
I know his death made a huge impact on you, but let's talk about the years in which you got to have him in your life. What do you remember about him in your childhood?
You'd call him today a girl dad. He taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me about investing. He had me be his stockbroker. He showed me how to read the stock tables in the newspaper in the morning, and then at the end of the day, call into the exchange, on the touchtone phone, and get the day's closing stock price.
How old were you when he did this?
I was about 7.
So you're 7 years old, sitting down with your dad, going over the stock prices in the newspaper.
Yep, in the morning before he'd take me to school.
I remember learning about money in kindergarten where you had the plastic coins, and I was obsessed with collecting a different type of coin and making sure I had one version of every currency that they taught us. So there's something about that early exposure to money that I think is really formative.
It is. It's really formative, and that's something that I definitely was taught by him and emulated. And I think that's why he fostered it, teaching me about investing. So it's not enough to save, but also enough, have to invest.
So what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were 7 years old, did you think you'd go into banking?
I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
Like my dad was. So he was, he was an attorney, and that was his job. But then he started buying companies. As an attorney, a corporate attorney, his company was the first Black-owned law firm on Wall Street. They helped structure deals for other people, a lot of other minority-owned businesses. Then in the 80s, he started doing his own deals, but he was still running the law firm. When he was a lawyer, that all made sense, right? Because that's a normal job. I remember as he started actually buying companies, things got all confusing, right? We were doing better financially, but I didn't know what to tell people at school, about what he did, right? Can I say he buys and sells companies? That sounds really weird. I asked him one day, and he said, "Tell them I'm a philanthropist." And he was very much about giving as you climb. And that's also something that I've worked to emulate. He was always successful, always giving back, starting from, when he first graduated from law school that year, he gave back $10. Then going through, he just started giving more and more, giving to schools, giving to libraries. And I think in all of those things, I wanted to emulate that also. So long story short, I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I just wanted to go work for him.
But then he passes, and you are how old when he dies?
So I was 12 when Dad died.
Wow.
And obviously it was really, really hard. It's really, really hard. And it complicated for me the life I wanted to have in business, and also my inheritance. And I think that's another reason why wealth management is so important for me.
I was going to say, I was doing a lot of reading on you, and I think you started meeting with a financial advisor twice a year when you were still a teen. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
What was that like? Because that is not a traditional teenage experience.
So the first time was shortly after my dad had died. Just a few weeks after, so I was 13. The money manager sat me down. He had this book, and he asked me if I knew what a stock was. Now, I think he was thrilled to see that I actually did. He walked me through the whole thing, and he walked me through asset allocation and stocks and bonds. And at the end, we've agreed that he will invest in Disney and the Limited. I've been shocked to learn that the Limited didn't just own the Limited, it owned Banana Republic, I think, and Express. And this is how I first got into investing stocks.
Based off of the companies that you were probably interested in as a 13-year-old.
Yeah. And now today, having spent more time in this, that is the natural way to get children involved in the stock market. You focus on something that they know. And that's actually something I did with my own children. They're various ages. They're 12, 9, and 4. So with my older two, I bought them a stock certificate. You can buy the stock, and you have a paper certificate so you can put on the wall so the kids can see it. My son also has this app that allow him to invest.
Okay.
So we met recently to look at his portfolio because he bought Tesla in the dip. So it's gone up a lot, and he's thinking about rebalancing. And so I actually took with him one of my investment outlook statements from one of my wealth manager meetings, and we went in front of it, and it was about the Magnificent Seven, NVIDIA and the tech stocks that have all gone up. So I explained it to him, and so he made a decision about how to rebalance. We're going to sell half of Tesla and put it into another one of the Magnificent Seven.
Wow, you're really paying your dad's legacy forward.
I guess just talking about it now, I'm like, oh wow, we really are doing a lot with it, and his grandson.
Before your dad died, you wanted to be a lawyer.
How did you find your path in your 20s? Did you feel lost at all in those years?
I did feel lost in those years, though at the time, I would have said I knew exactly what I was doing, which was I was going to get great grades so I could go to a great school, so then I could get a great job, and everyone would be proud of me. That basically was the plan. What kind of great job? I didn't know. It just needed to be impressive. What school, what college? Well, the one that my dad or parents would make them most happy. I ended up, though, finding a real passion in journalism. I was a business reporter, and I loved, again, I already knew about investing and companies, and so I ended up covering real estate and writing about homes, design, also writing about families, the entrepreneurs and business people and families that owned a lot of land and were developing real estate here in the city, but around the country. That took me back to this theme that really is the theme that inspires me so much, which is about wealth and families and how people structure it. So even as I was writing all these articles, I'd found this zone that related to all of these things that were important for my life, how you raise children with wealth. After doing that for a while, which I loved, and I made so many great friends, I realized that I didn't want to just observe and write about the world. I had all these ideas. Things that I felt should exist. So I think just my natural inclination, what I inherited from my dad, which is this desire to drive change, vision, and creating things, kind of spurred me to look beyond just writing about things, but actually do them. So I ended up starting my first organization, which was a nonprofit. It's called All Star Code. It is a computer science education nonprofit that teaches coding to men of color. And the idea behind it was that this was in 2013, tech was this engine of job growth and wealth creation, and there was this focus on not leaving anyone behind, and a great impetus on teaching girls to code. Yet there was this group that was being kind of left behind in the race to leave no one behind. There was talent there that could really benefit from a leg up, from a boost from education. And that also came, and I knew that there were boys who could benefit from that leg up because my dad actually had benefited from that in the 1960s.
So other than the obvious, the biological, how has your father impacted you? And why do you say you are sitting here today because of him?
I remember just every time something difficult would come Dad's way, he would make a plan to overcome it. And that is just absolutely what I inherited and what I look to emulate. I remember coming into our dining room, and this was in Paris. We lived in Paris for 4.5 years, so I was maybe 10, and Dad's having a meeting. He didn't usually have meetings at home. So I go into our dining room, and it's my dad, and then it's 10 guys, all white guys. And I run in, and I'm wearing like shorts and a t-shirt. I forget why. I think it was even the weekend. I'm not sure what was happening. And all the guys like jump up, like stand up. They were sitting, and they all like stand up and come to attention, like the military. And my dad's there, and he like sort of like turns around. He's like, "Hi, Christina." I am I'm just scared and terrified. First that there are strange people in this house, and then that they're standing to attention like the Queen's come in or something. So I'm about to like run out, because I was trying to just get to my room. But Dad's like, no, come here. So I come there in like my shorts and everything. And he introduces me. I think maybe I shake every hand, or whatever. But he like kind of brings me close, kind of gets me comfortable with this whole situation. Thinking back on that moment, it's really, I think, unheard of or unique for a Black girl to have an experience where a bunch of like white men treat her with such respect. And I do think at some level that experience and happening at such a young age, in a way, did change everything for me.
It empowered you. It
empowered me, yeah. And just, it it's a zone. I grew up in the zone where that's normal and that can happen, and that I knew what that felt like, just to have respect, that kind of respect. And of course, my dad had earned that respect. And then just as a result of being his daughter, I inherited it. And now I'm trying to pay it forward and give other people that feeling.
So Christina, we are standing in your office. It's beautiful.
Yes.
This is your father's schedule
Mm-hmm.
from 1963.
Yep, 1963 or so. Don't know exactly, but when he was at Virginia State, a historically black college down in Virginia. So this embodies his ethos: make a plan, execute, do your homework, and follow through. It embodies the secret to his success, what I learned. My grandmother, his mom, actually saved that copy because he did dozens of those, because as the schedule changed, he'd redo a new one. And it outlines every hour of the day, Monday to Friday, of what he needs to do and when, so that he can succeed, achieve his goals. Begin the day, get up to lights out every hour, Monday through Friday, every moment, scheduled to help him get to what he needed to do. Well, except for here. So, and even I love he scheduled in, what does he call it? Recreation.
He gave himself a very precise hour and 15 minutes of recreation.
Hour and 15 minutes of recreation. What that was, I don't know.
And then we have a few awards and commemorative plaques. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could start with this guy at the bottom.
Yeah, so these two, I think we can put together. This is a Champion of Change award I got for STEM access for my work starting All-Star Code. The organization has graduated over 1,000 students, and many of them pipelining into jobs at terrific tech companies as software engineers, and well over 90% graduating from four-year colleges after doing our summer program.
That's incredible.
This award, though, also is just as important. It says the 10 under 20 Young Innovators to Watch award. And this wasn't given to me. It was given by some of my All-Star Code students because they said that it's because of what All-Star Code instilled in them.
What is your new company called?
My new company is called Beatrice Advisors. It's an independent, woman and minority-owned multifamily office. Its mission is simple. It's to deliver high-quality financial services to this new generation of wealth.
What gave you the idea to start this?
Well, I've been a client of wealth management firms for 30 years now, and over the course of time, I've found a particular model that I think really works for me as a woman, as a Black and Asian person who didn't come from a tradition of multi-generational wealth. And I think it's time to share it with others.
Do you think the traditional financial services industry is not serving women and people of color as effectively as it could have?
I think wealth management needs modernizing. So that's what we're trying to do. We're modernizing wealth management. The company is tech-enabled, and it's focused on empowering clients, not just handing them financial documents to check some boxes and then go off on their day. But we want to really empower our clients to be able to take ownership over their own finances and deliver value to them as far as returns, also as far as helping them meet their goals.
How are you finding clients? Have you been operating in stealth for a little while and this is your big unveiling?
We have been operating in stealth. I've been working on this business for over 2 years now, and we've got a pilot group of clients. We have an amount of discretionary capital to manage. This will be managing my money, my assets, doing all of my planning, and opening it up to others. We're ready. It's the biggest thing I've ever done.
It's the biggest thing you've ever done.
The biggest, most important thing, most impactful thing I have done and will ever do.
What makes you say that?
Money on its own is not the most important thing, but money is the foundation of all of the things that are important. All the things that we want, today you have to pay for with money. No, they say it can't buy you love, but everything else is money. So the way that it's invested and the way that it's managed is the foundation, I believe, for a healthy, successful life. That's what I found for me and for my family.
You talked about the stock lessons that your dad gave you when you were 7. Did he ever sit you down and give you business lessons that you use today? I mean, starting a new company is not easy. Do you ever look back to conversations with him or even just the model that he gave in order to navigate the challenges of starting up?
Dad was from another era, and he had a different way of doing things. He was a 1980s finance guy. Now, it was a cutthroat time, on Wall Street. So there are some things he did that I've had to learn. I think you can be successful and not necessarily do it that way. And I was having this joke with a friend of mine. One of the big things in the book is set your terms up front, which actually came from my grandmother, his mother. And it's about negotiation, setting your terms up front. And you know something? I don't really do that. I go and I like the person, and we have an idea of what we're going to do, and of course at a basic level, but I'll just be like, well, let's see how it goes, and then we'll and then we'll arrange, because this is a relationship, and we want the best for each other. So I think that, of course, yes, you set your terms up front, and I do use that. Yet at the same time, I don't like to negotiate. For example, I just say what I want, and then you say what you want, and then I'll either do yes, no, but we're not negotiating. To some extent, I think that if you're trying to work with someone over the long term and they tell you what they want, and to counter it with, now maybe I'm going to come off as super Pollyanna, but I think if it's a relationship, I'm telling someone what I want, I'm telling them what I want. I'm telling you the truth. So are you going to do it or not? I'm not, why is it necessary, especially when it's a relationship? I think when it's an acquisition, it can be different. It's different because that's sort of a one and done thing. That if I'm working with someone, pay me. And if someone says, well, I want to be paid this, and if I say, well, I'll pay you 20% less, I feel like you're almost calling that person a liar, because I just trust that's what you want to be paid. And if I think it's too expensive, I just won't hire them. No. So it's not necessarily just taking whatever you're given, but just not going around.
What do you hope for Beatrice 2.0 to accomplish?
I hope Beatrice Advisors helps our clients achieve their goals, achieve, their dreams, secure their legacy, their prosperity. I hope that our clients, many of them have worked so hard for their money, we help them ensure that they keep it, that they preserve it and keep it and grow it. I think it's so sad when you have someone who's, again, worked so hard, for what they've built, and then as a result of, poor planning, or any number of things, end up having to start over, or not getting that easy retirement that they thought they should. So I want to help people have healthy, successful families while preserving and growing their wealth.
So how big could Beatrice get? What's your projected or desired AUM?
We want to grow client by client, and family by family with this business. We are serving a unique group of clients, not just because they have, say, a high net worth or a lot of money. But we're looking for people the clients who will want to work with us, who want to develop a relationship with us are those who are intellectually curious, who are engaged in their finances, willing to put in the time to really understand what it is we're doing and partner with us for decades. And so it's important to us to grow client by client, family by family. Certainly we have certain revenue targets, and I'm not thinking about, a certain size. I want to own this business forever. I want it to be a privately owned business forever. So we're not focused on those kinds of targets.
So you're building your own legacy.
Yes. building my own legacy, and the Lewis legacy, the Lewis Halpern family. And what's next?
I told her, I said, I want to do this for a living. And I'll never forget, she said, what, like you can make fitness your career? You know?
Behind every great story of business success, there is usually one person, one supporter, mentor, investor, or even customer, without whom that success story might not exist. Bill Gates has Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett had legendary investor Benjamin Graham. And Sadie Lincoln has Mick DeLuca. Earlier this year, Sadie was named to the Forbes 50 over 50 list for her work in co-founding and growing Bar 3 from a Portland-based bar class into a nationwide wellness brand. And she says that Mick has no idea that he was the catalyst for this success. Sadie traces it all back to her days as an undergrad at UCLA. Mick mentioned to Sadie that she might enjoy going to a trade conference on group fitness. And what occurs next is proof that sometimes the in-between moments in a career are the ones that have the biggest impact. Sadie Lincoln, you are the co-founder and CEO of Bar 3. You were on the 2024 50 over 50 list. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I just rattled off a bunch of titles and accomplishments, and since we are here for the one who changed everything, I want to start by asking, who is the person without whom you would not be sitting in this seat today?
The person who profoundly changed my path has no idea. His name is Mick DeLuca, and he was an administrator at UCLA. He ran the John Wooden Center, which is the college recreation center, where I worked and kind of discovered my passion for fitness.
So Mick worked at this recreation center. Do you remember the first time you met him? Did he make an impression?
Not really. This is the interesting thing. I think he'll be surprised that I'm even naming him. It's one of those things that was behind the scenes, kind of an in-between moment that profoundly changed my life. I didn't work directly for him. I worked for several other amazing administrators, including a guy named Dennis Caney, who also changed my life. But Mick noticed my passion in the fitness industry, and this is before fitness was a clear professional path. And he put my name in the hat to be considered for a graduate assistantship at the College of William and Mary, where I ended up applying, and I was awarded a full ride to get my master's and start their group exercise program there on the campus.
So you go to this recreation center at UCLA, and are you going just to participate in group fitness, or do you go intending to run a fitness class?
I stumbled upon it. I went to City College first and then transferred into UCLA. So I was a transfer kid, junior, in this big college. I grew up in a small town, Eugene, Oregon. Definitely felt fish out of water. I was lonely. And I discovered the John Wooden Center, and the connection and community there just infused me with more confidence as a student. And then more importantly, I discovered the group exercise program, which I fell in love with. And I ended up going through the student instructor training program, and I became a step instructor. And this totally dates me, but back then we even had like records and tapes and like a microphone that you held. It was an explosive concept in the early 90s to teach step. And that's kind of where I got my start, my passion.
And I might be dating myself, but I hear step and I think step dancing. But is this the step, the little platform you step on and you step off, like kind of jazzercise?
Sort of, yeah, but on a platform, yeah.
Interesting. And did you have a dance background, or what got you into group fitness in the beginning?
I went to art schools, kind of a alternative education, but not seriously. I didn't have a serious love for dance. I was never an athlete, but I loved the energy of exercising together in a group, and the camaraderie and the feeling I would get afterwards really just stuck with me. I remember at one point, the woman that taught the later class, which was the like prime time class, she was amazing. I totally looked up to her. She was a little bit older. She was about to graduate. And I told her, I said, I want to do this for a living. And I'll never forget, she said, what, like you can make fitness your career? It was so unusual to think that I wanted, to do it for a living. She went on to Anderson Consulting, and, most of my friends were doing more of that professional path, but I just had a feeling that there was going to be something really special in this whole group exercise thing.
So you were convinced there was something special, and it sounds like Mick saw something special in you. So he writes your recommendation for the William and Mary program.
And we did have some interaction. So I do remember meeting him in the hallway, and I was sort of excited because he was the big guy. Like, he was the top guy in the rec center. So I was always excited to talk to him. And I remember him telling me about a conference, which I was even like, what's a conference? Like, I'd never been to a conference before. And he sent me to NRSA, which is the College Recreation International Association. He sent me there. I think he went with me, introduced me to people there, kind of shepherded me through the process of networking, sharing my dream, my vision as a student, and ultimately believing in me enough to share with me that he thought I could do this in graduate school. And potentially, my thought was I might run college recreation centers myself, or maybe just the group exercise part of the business.
I see. How do you then become the founder of a boutique wellness brand? What are the intermediary steps there? You have made fitness your career.
Yeah, it's been my life. It really has, and it really did start there. Right out of grad school, I landed a job with 24 Hour Fitness, and at the time there were 25 gyms. And I, at 25 years old, my job was to scale the group exercise across those gyms. I thought maybe I'd work there a couple of years. I ended up working there 11 years. And I helped grow the company from 25 gyms to over 430. Really cut my teeth there, learned the business. I ended up working for the founder and CEO, Mark Maustroff, CEO at the time, and really learned what it was, the business, how to scale the business. The marketing side, the branding side was really interesting to me. But I also learned how I didn't fit in to that industry, and how I wanted to make something my own and create a product that really solved a need that I had personally.
Why didn't you feel like you fit in?
I felt lonely in the big gym, and more importantly, I had this quiet shame. As a marketer, I was in the marketing department and branding department. Our primary way of selling a membership was the before and after picture. That if you come to this gym and you do these things and you have these supplements and these products and you do it in this order and at this time frame, right, you will get to this ideal, this imaginary future picture, which is usually of someone else, right? It's not even of ourselves. But even if it is of ourselves, there's no such thing as our before or our after. They're both imagined. What was missing for me was a feeling of presence. And I was chasing and fighting with my body to shape it into this imaginary ideal. I think a lot of us have learned that fitness is about becoming something other than we are. We're not enough as we are, so we need to do these things to be winning, to be achieving, to be attractive. And I discovered on my own, actually, when I was pregnant with my first child, how to work out in a way that honored my body in the moment as it was and as it was changing, and to modify moves to really be congruent with what my body needed in that moment. And that was the seed of Bar 3. That was when I was like, I want to branch out and try something different.
And you officially launched Bar 3 or founded it in 2008.
Yes.
Take me back to those early days. How hard was it? I mean, we're in the middle of a recession at 2008. That was a tough economic time.
It was the height of the global financial crisis, a great time to start a business. But I knew in every cell of my body that it was going to be successful, because I'd spent so many years in the industry studying it, both from my own journey, but also access to all the data and behavior. And I knew people were longing for connection and community and a smaller boutique concept. Boutique fitness was just taking off in 2008. I knew that I wanted a workout program that was sustainable, that was something you could do over a long period of time. My heritage was in yoga. I became a yoga instructor. I really loved the philosophy of yoga, the strength of Pilates. I loved the efficiency and effective downbeat of bar. And I wanted to kind of create a concept around my favorite disciplines that I knew would, resonate with other people, with the philosophy of let's do this to be present in our own bodies versus trying to be like everybody else.
I will out myself as someone who has taken several Bar 3 classes, and as you are describing your background and what attracted you to fitness, I can see each part of the class, the part that feels like yoga, the part that feels like Pilates, the part where you're picking up weights, right down to the meditation at the end, almost like a shavasana in a yoga. So I'm curious, typically when you found a business, if you're in consumer products, you build the product first, or you build the software, you have a proof of concept. There's a choreography to a lot of Bar 3 classes. Did you develop the choreography before you found your location or built the business plan, or what came first for you?
I'm a doer. I create as I move, literally and figuratively, but as I move. So my husband and I are co-founders. We moved from Oakland Hills to Portland, Oregon with this business plan. So we wrote a business plan. We did our research. We had an idea of what we were going to do. And I had been teaching for 15 years. So I was starting to put together sequencing and a real designed class around body balance and everything I wanted to accomplish. Once we got to Portland, I found a little studio that I rented for like $20 an hour. It was amazing. It was above a Whole Foods. And I started to teach free classes, and I was designing the class in motion with my clients and just, discovering how I could fine tune and adjust and put it together. One thing that differentiates Bar 3 to this day is it isn't a rigid system. We designed it, and I say we because it's always now been a collaboration, to have variety and flexibility and to honor the latest science and what our clients' bodies need versus being, honoring a heritage and being really rigid within that heritage, which is different than yoga. It's different than classic bar. It's different than classic Pilates. It really is about changing and evolving. So it's kind of a living, breathing class to this day.
You have nearly 200 locations right now, and all the franchisees are women. All these franchises are owned and operated by women. When did that become part of the business plan?
Right from the beginning. So I wrote a business plan wanting that vision. I knew we were going to scale it, and I knew I wanted to do it with other women because I knew they were the ones that would authentically resonate with the product. And I knew I wanted to do it franchising because they would be my investors versus going out and raising money from people who didn't have like a real authentic connection to the product. And I believe that everybody has their own unique genius, and I wanted to see what other women would do with this Bar 3 thing. Like how they would elevate it, amplify it, make it their own. I really believe that that's the magic of growing a multi-unit, operation, is feeling local, even though you have the infrastructure of a bigger company. So that was a big part of our ethos from day one. It still is. Even our instructor training. When we sit around at the first instructor training with brand new instructors, the first thing we do is get to know every instructor, and we tell them, by the end of this instructor training, our class is going to be better because of your wisdom. You're going to bring something new to the table. Maybe you'll ask a question or offer an idea that will integrate into the class and make it better from then on. And that is the same philosophy we have with our franchise owners.
Is there anything you learned at the John Wooden Rec Center or from Mick and his instructors that you have taken into Bar 3?
So much. Technically, how to teach. The instructor training program was dialed at UCLA. We taught to the musical phrase, how you perform up on the stage, but also integrate the audience. Modifications even back then we worked on. So the actual technical side of group exercise is my foundation. But I think even more importantly, how I was treated in the in-between moments. That was the biggest takeaway. That's why Mick profoundly changed my life. It was the in-between moment. It was like in the hallway, hey, I think, you maybe should go to this rec conference. It seems like you really like fitness. Like just taking that one little minute to see me and then to open that door for me, that has really carried into our model at Bar 3. We have young play lounge workers, for example, that take care of the babies while young moms usually are working out, or young parents are working out. And those young women are networked within the other women in the studio. And we talk about that with our team. It's like, these young women are going to meet other people that could change their lives right here in the studio.
You are seeding other people to meet the one who changes everything for them.
100%. Yeah.
I was going to ask this at the end of the conversation, but since we got there now, what's your advice for someone who feels like they haven't met their Mick? They haven't met the person who's transformed their career or their life in the way that they might want to transform their career or life?
Well, when I was asked this question, the question you asked me, I had to pause because it wasn't really clear. I didn't have that like amazing woman that took me under her wing and taught me how to have a voice as a woman. That's what I think of when I think of someone who would change your life, or someone who had a career exactly like I wanted, someone that was incredibly aspirational. But when I really thought about it, it was Mick. I think my advice is keep your eyes open. Your person might be someone very unexpected. It could be your Uber driver. It could be your Bar3 instructor. I really think there's people all over who shape and change our lives.
As we talk about the growth of the business, I'm wondering, was there an inflection point? Is there a year that you thought like, okay, yes, we're on to something, or the most explosive growth, or how do you think about the time since 2008?
It was really quick. Out of the gates, we were successful. I would say 2011 was a big year for us. We launched an online streaming business in 11, and it was we were an early adopter. Not many people were doing that. I had the opportunity to train a legendary superstar. I trained Madonna a couple times, which was amazing. And so there was a couple things like that happened all at once that I think did definitely launch us in a big way. But really, when we put up a little tab on our website that said grow with us, we got immediate interest of women wanting to open their own Bar3s.
For franchise locations. That's interesting that you went online in 2011. So
Yeah.
you were in some ways very ready when the pandemic hit.
Yes, yeah.
Take us
Well,
back.
in some ways.
In some ways. The
Yeah.
fitness industry got decimated by the pandemic. And I was looking up statistics before we spoke. There's one estimate that 27% of US fitness centers closed due to the pandemic. Millions of people lost jobs, and it's been a tough recovery. Yeah. What was that moment like for you and Bar3?
Well, certainly our online streaming business was what helped us stay financially stable. We grew 100% year over year with our revenue for our online streaming business within 1 month. So that was amazing. It allowed us to keep our key leadership team intact. But what made us powerful was our women franchisees, who had, prior to that, developed such authentic relationships with their clients and their community. And then our ethos around, which from day one, we've always been about fighting lonely. We believe that relationships matter more than exercise. So as a company, we got together on the Zoom calls and we said, let's double down on this. Let's fight lonely. And because of that, we were remarkably resilient.
Where do you think you'd be today had you not met Mick at the John Wooden Rec Center so many years ago?
Gosh, I really don't know. I have asked myself that question. I wouldn't have been in fitness. I don't think I would have known that I loved teaching group exercise. I was a sociology major. I was into marketing. I don't know what I would have done. I really don't know what I would have done without fitness. I found my lane. I found my path and my purpose. So yeah, I don't think I would have been a CEO. I never thought I was going to be a CEO. I would have definitely been a mother. I've always wanted to be a mother. I know that.
What did you want to be when you were younger? When you were like 5 or 6, did you dream of a career?
Honestly, no. I wanted to be a mom. That's my earliest memory, is wanting to be a mom.
Wow.
I wasn't even college bound. I didn't take the SAT. I went to a city college, like I mentioned. And then all of a sudden, this ambition just kind of grabbed hold of me.
Well, you had an unconventional upbringing. Can you share a little bit about how you grew up?
Sure. Well, it's my normal, but I guess it is unconventional to most. My mom and her dearest friends, they met in the late 60s, in their 20s. And they ended up becoming single mothers for one reason or another and decided to raise us kids collaboratively. It wasn't a commune because there wasn't like a leader or an organized system around it, but they really created their own system around raising us and in a collective.
It's
Yeah.
unconventional, but it actually sounds idealistic in some ways. I think my friends and I joke about that. Like, how much easier would it be to pool resources and do it as a group versus these individual units that are across the country from each other?
I hear that so much, and I hear it a lot from single mothers too. Just having that kind of community and connection. We're all still a family. I have brothers and sisters who I'm not blood related to, but are truly my brothers and sisters. And I have these amazing aunties. It's kind of a great love story, actually. These women are still dearest of friends, over 50 years later. So.
And it makes me wonder, because you've talked about community within a workout class, if the earliest seeds were in your upbringing.
Well, definitely. I really discovered that later, that I unconsciously built a company that reimagined how I grew up. We're a company of women in a circle supporting each other. It's all about collective wisdom. It's not about just one person being the answer. Those were all values that I imprinted my entire upbringing. So yes, absolutely.
When you talk about collective wisdom, I do have a question. Female founders get a lot of advice.
Yes.
Some good, a lot bad. How do you tune out the bad advice? And specifically with regards to this series, how do you tune out the advice from the people who want to be the one who changes everything for you, but really aren't your person?
Yeah, I think one thing I notice and that resonates with me is when someone experience shares versus telling me what to do. So in my experience, I found it really helpful to work with an executive recruiter to take my company to the next level. And I learned these things. I learned that this didn't work. I learned that this did work. And you might want to consider that, because that kind of advice gives me permission to take whatever I want from it. I've certainly had my share of advice that felt kind of demoralizing or patronizing. But anytime anyone shares from their direct experience, I kind of have the power to take what I want from that. I also think that, just like we were talking about with Mick, sometimes you can get advice from someone or learn from someone without them even knowing. Just watching people, observing people, and taking what you want from that experience.
So you say he doesn't know the impact he's had on you. Have you been in touch at all recently?
I actually did I found him. I reached out to him recently, and this is over 30 years ago when I was at the rec center, and he remembered me. I wrote him a letter, and I found the other guy, Dennis Caney. I wrote him a letter as well. I did explain to them how much they profoundly changed my lives, and they were both thrilled.
Did they know Bar 3? Were they familiar?
They were, but they didn't connect that it was me that started it. And they both are still educators, and they are both still at UCLA and in larger roles, helping students to this day.
And what's your advice, since you seem to have circles in which you are the one who changes everything for someone else? What's your advice for people who want to be the one to change someone else's life?
I think my number one advice would be to honor your own core values, your own unique strength, and to live truly in that. Because just by doing that, you give everyone else permission to do the same.
Sadie Lincoln, thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Sallie Krawcheck, thank you for coming to 3050 and sitting down with Forbes.
No, happy to be here.
I want to start with some news.
Yes.
You seem nervous. Ellevest.
What news?
What news? Maybe it's news to you. No, Ellevest recently expanded an offering for its female investors, and it's a new product. Can you talk about this? Because I think it's really interesting.
Well, I think the best kept secret about Ellevest are the types of investments that we're doing. And what we found is nobody doesn't love a 60-40 investment portfolio, but what really can generate excitement and financial returns are investments in other women and investments for impact. And so while we continue to do the 60-40 portfolio, we do it with a twist. In our muni bonds, for example, we can invest by neighborhood and in the community development center and not in the sports arena. We also can invest in workforce housing fixed up sustainably, rented to women in transition, women venture funds, all of those for women for whom those are appropriate investments. And the one that we recently announced was our clients funding the documentary of Michelle Wie as well. So really eclectic and interesting things that get people, I think, really excited about the concept of investing in a way that traditional investments did not.
Do you have to be an accredited investor?
You do for most of these, because they tend to be private. We do have impact investing for our non-accredited investors as well. Tends to be through the form of an ETF.
Okay. What has been the philosophy in expanding to these types of investments? Because Ellevest did not start there, obviously.
No, we started as a digital advisor, really with the point of view that the investing industry was not really focused on or centering women. For example, when we launched, and still today, our investing algorithm is the only one that takes gender into account, which matters if you're a woman and you earn less, take more career breaks, your salary peaks sooner, and you live longer, right? So that's really where we started. And then we got demand from other women who had more complex investment portfolios and said, I really want to be part of this as well. And our mission is to get more money in the hands of women. Our goal is to help women build wealth through investing and financial planning and financial guidance, and we're now doing that across the spectrum, from that first dollar through to women who have multiple tens of millions of dollars with us, to really be there on her financial journey through her whole life.
So you're competing with the Fidelities and the Charles Schwabs of the world to get my money?
Yes and no. What we tend to be competing with mostly, particularly for younger women, is their money sitting in the bank, or it's sitting in an old 401k at a job they left. And the force that we're fighting is inertia, which is, gee, you know, I don't notice that I'm losing out on wealth if I don't move it over to Ellevest today or tomorrow or the next day or whatever. But over the course of her lifetime, it can cost her hundreds of thousands, for some women millions of dollars. For wealthier women, we tend to then, you know, be competing with more of the traditional advisors. And we really stand ready for her when she comes at a point of transition, oftentimes, where she looks around and says, you know what, maybe my dad's financial advisor or my husband's financial advisor or my ex-husband's financial advisor doesn't represent me, you know, hasn't been through the things I've been through, and isn't offering the types of investments that an Ellevest offers. And so we will often see at a point of transition that she'll say, you know what, this is really what I want now.
I think that's a common experience for women. I talked to Sheila Johnson yesterday,
I
the
know.
co-founder of BET and Salamander Resorts and Collection. And she has this experience of having gone to the bank with a lot of money.
A lot of money.
And nine figures in that.
Yes.
And was, you know,
Yes.
greeted with a lower level, I shouldn't say lower level, but a junior employee.
When I was running Merrill Lynch, we saw this all the time. At the time, I think still today, 85% of financial advisors are men. They would have the couple as a client, and then when we would do, you know, review them sort of behind the glass as they were engaging with the couple, we'd say, how much time did you spend talking to each of them? And they'd say, you know, it wasn't quite 50-50 because we talked about the football game, and so, you know, it was 55% talking to him, 45% talking to her, and we'd say, actually watch the tape, it's 80-20. And so, Maggie, the industry today has pretty perfect product market fit. I'll try that again. The industry today has pretty perfect product market fit. Say that 12 times.
Pretty perfect product market fit.
It's hard to say.
It is hard to say.
For men.
Yes.
And men tend to leave at a very low rate, single-digit rate, until they pass away. When that money goes to her, because 80% of women die single, we live 6 to 8 years longer than men, half of marriages end in divorce. When she gets it, she leaves that joint financial advisor at a rate of 70 to 90% over the next year. What? And typically puts it in the bank. So perfect product market for him, not good product market fit for her. And the industry has always sort of had a narrative around this, which is, well, she's risk averse. She needs more financial education. She doesn't like investing. Just these, this is her, not us. And Ellevest was the first that said, you know what? Let's build something centering her as opposed to trying to get her to change.
That's smart. And so that's an opportunity for you, and that's why you have 1.9 billion in AUM.
We're chugging along.
Even through, I know savings rates kind of took a dip last year and the year before as inflation has surged. So how's that affecting your business?
Well, yeah, I'm sure it has, but we grew at a 40% rate last year with our marketing spending down 40%.
Wow.
And so we are really seeing some market share gains.
So would you say Ellevest consumers are the ones who are a little more, do they have more knowledge, or they're risk happy? I shouldn't say risk happy, because it's not risky to invest.
No, but over the long term, it has historically not been risky to invest. Over the short term, which is what people tend to track towards, it can of course be risky to invest in the stock market, but again, over the long term, it hasn't. What we did have seen, which is meaningful, is that in tough markets, which we've had over the past couple of years, women are less likely, indeed much less likely, to panic than men are. And so the men log into their accounts more often when you do and the market is volatile. It makes you want to do something. And that something is often not the right thing to do. We find that we set her a plan and she sticks to that plan. And so we've always known, the research has shown, that women tend to be steadier hands with investing and therefore get better financial results. It's research based, not my opinion, and we're actually seeing it come to life at Ellevest.
think we need to shout that from Wall Street's rooftops, don't we? Now, you just talked about the longevity of women and the wealth transfer. And Ellevest has new research that you initiated, and you were calling it the great wealth transfer or the feminization of wealth.
That's right.
Can you break that down? What does that mean?
So baby boomers have amassed more wealth than any generation in history. They're very fortunate. Markets tended to go up, real estate prices went up. It's a pretty good environment. Baby boomers, the first of them, are approaching the age of 80. And so are beginning to pass away. This will set in motion the great wealth transfer. A lot of people talk about it and say, what does it mean for millennials? What does it mean for Gen Z? At Ellevest, we look at it and say, what does it mean for women? It means that the money will go to them first. Again, women, 80% of women die single. 90% of women manage their money on their own at some point in their lives. It goes to them first before it goes to the kids, which means that women will control the majority of the wealth in this country over the next, call it 10 years. So, in fact, it's all of the feminist movements, women's longevity is going to achieve what they haven't been able to achieve. So what does it mean? According to the research we did, the feminization of wealth means confident women. Confident. We've always thought women don't have confidence around money, and so therefore they don't have as much money. In fact, what the research shows is women have not had as much money, so they've lacked confidence. Once they get a financial windfall, those who had it, their confidence goes up by about double and makes them, in fact, more confident than men. So what does a confident woman do? A confident woman gives $1 billion to the Albert Einstein School of Medicine in the Bronx to wipe out tuition in perpetuity. That's what a confident woman does. She invests more in her family, she invests more in her community, she gives more to nonprofits, she fights climate change. The feminization of wealth, she might leave her spouse or a partner. We've seen, particularly for younger women, they say, if I were to get a financial windfall, I'm out of here because I can afford to be. Yeah. And so confident women may take confident action, which I can't wait to see how it affects all of us.
I have so many follow-up questions, but when you talk about the application of the feminization of wealth, I think about politics in the U.S., and you hosted an event for All Raise at your apartment a few months ago. Almost a year ago now. My sense of time is a little warped. But you and the other women, and All Raise, of course, is the nonprofit trying to get more check writers who are women giving money to startups run by women. And you and the other women in the room talked about how our political system could change if more women had more money. We're in an election year, so can you talk about the ties between women and wealth and power?
Absolutely. So women today have about 30 cents of wealth to every dollar a white man has. For women of color, for black women, it's a penny. And by the way, it's been moving in the wrong direction. Women today give about 30 cents of political donations to every dollar men give. And so you can imagine as the wealth grows, she gives greater political donations to candidates who support her point of view. In that world, have we struck down Roe v. Wade, right? In that world, is there more legislation that's being passed for women and girls? Do we have mandated paid parental leave finally, right? How do politics become kinder? If we have more politicians who are representing our points of view, do we have as many wars? I mean, you can see where there could be a truly positive ripple effect from this as women really step into their wealth.
I like imagining those ripple effects.
I know. It's just a question of how far we've gone and how long it's going to take us to pull that back.
Do you have a speculation?
No, I don't.
No crystal ball.
I don't.
I want to zoom out and maybe less speculation and talk about your current and your future. So you recently joined a board, and you told me that you try to only do one board at once. So before we talk about the board, why is that your philosophy? And was there a time you were on multiple boards and it was overwhelming?
When I was in corporate America, I remember at one point I was on the Dell board and I think the BlackRock board. But I've gone to one board only, in part because I'm so consumed with Ellevest and the work that we're doing. And so every additional hour that I've got, I want to spend either with my family or on the business, maybe my cat, a little bit of time with her, because it's such a high return on my time, and the work we're doing is so important. That said, I think as an executive, it's always important to keep yourself fresh. And so as I've thought about a board, what is it that I can bring to them that can help their business? What is it they can bring to me? And what is it that I can be learning at any point in my career? So, back when I was thinking about starting Ellevest, I went on a startup board. When I was thinking about scaling Ellevest, a growth board. And so sort of having this series of boards to bring in the additional, quick learning really matters to me, which is why I joined the board of BioCatch. Security is, in fintech, one of the most, I think Ellevest is the most important thing I could work on, but security for, for banks, for financial services companies, the lifeblood of our economy, and helping them keep the customer and client data safe is pretty important.
Oh, absolutely. We had Michelle Zatlin, the co-founder of Cloudflare, here yesterday talking about how by 2025 there will be $10.5 trillion of cybercrime in lost money from cybercrime. So it is probably, is it the biggest existential threat to fintech businesses?
It's a pretty big threat, and it ripples, of course, because if you have those losses, you lose consumer confidence. Financial services are the lifeblood of the economy. So if you've got a lack of confidence, we all know what happens, which is the economy contracts.
Confidence. It's funny how that keeps coming up. Personal confidence and then economic confidence. How do you keep your confidence intact?
Put the blinders on, eyes on the prize. We were talking on that panel earlier. You really, it's important as an entrepreneur to stay focused on what's important and really let the other things go. I remember Masters of Scale, one of the things Reid Hoffman talked about is there's some fires you have to let burn. And I will tell my team, I know this is a problem, but that fire is going to burn. I know we're not as good at X or Y as we want to be, or this department isn't working as well as we wanted to. We can't fight every fire. Just stay really focused in on the key things, both professionally and personally.
Can't fight every fire. Oh, I needed to hear that right now.
There's some you just have to say, let it burn.
Let it burn. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I know this is more leadership-y than in-depth investment, which we could probably talk about investment and SPVs and building a fintech company till we're blue in the face, but when I was talking to you about your leadership thesis or strategy, you talked about being irreproachable on your analytics and your numbers. Can you talk about how you came to that as a strategy?
Well, I've been around for a bit. And certainly in those early years, as I began to get the first, second, third promotion, I was the only woman in the room. And I thought very hard about what it was going to take for me to get the fifth, sixth, and seventh promotion. And the power in financial services is the numbers. And if you know the numbers and you have the numbers and you're responsible for the numbers, it doesn't matter how internalized the sexism or the misogyny or the anti-Southernism or the bottle blondism is or whatever, they've got to come to you. And if you are then the source of the knowledge and the source of truth and you're engaging with people, then that starts to form the relationship. And instead of becoming that brassy, aggressive woman who's taking the job I wanted my son to have, you become a real person. And so I found knowing the numbers on Wall Street, that is the center of power, that's where to be. And then you and I also talked about having a certain, not fighting every last battle. If you look for sexism and you look for unfairness, you will find it everywhere. And is this small to medium-sized battle the one you want to fight? Or do you want to hold your fire for a more significant battle? And so letting some things just roll off your back, and finally bringing a sense of humor to it. I'm not a naturally funny person. I'm not even that funny anyway. But having a laugh with people, if they're laughing with you, they're not angry with you. And so using that as a little defense mechanism as well, and again to form relationships, was pretty effective for me.
It's also disarming. And last year on the 3050 stage, Gloria Steinem said we need more laughter because that's the only emotion that can't be compelled or forced or manipulated.
She's so good.
She's so good.
Everything she says is so smart. She's so good. How about my favorite Gloria Steinem is we won't solve the masculinity, we will not solve the masculinity of power until we solve the feminization of wealth.
I like that.
Right? And, in a capitalist society, my putting it not as eloquently as she did, if women don't have as much money as men do, women won't be equal with men. And until the money is equalized, only then is the power equalized.
It's so
true.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
Sallie Krawcheck, you have been the CEO of Wall Street Banks. You have founded companies. You have raised venture funding. You are out there ringing the bell for the feminization of wealth. And you are an icon and a mentor to a lot of people. But do you feel pressure or the weight of being a mentor? And do you wish other people, other leaders, of any gender would step up?
I do. I think it's truly important that each of us do what we can for the next generation. And I do it not only in the let me mentor you, young lady, but through the work at Ellevest. That if we can help get more money to women, that's the greatest mentoring there is. And so in everything we're doing, and this isn't by, happenstance. I put in real thought into what the next phase of my career would be. And this is where I thought I can take the experiences that I've been fortunate enough and hardworking enough and stubborn enough to have and channel them into something that can actually make a demonstrable difference in individual women's lives. And, I was a couple weeks ago at the airport, had an Ellevest bag, and a young woman stopped me and said, "Do you work at Ellevest? Are you an Ellevest client?" And I said, "Oh, I'm the CEO." And she said, "You've got to thank the team, because I invested with you several years ago. I just took out the money to go to graduate school." Chills.
I just got them
chills, right? Chills.
Yeah. It shows you what money can do.
Absolutely.
Well, Sallie, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Ava DuVernay, thank you for sitting down with Forbes for the 50 over 50.
So happy to be here.
You are a director, a writer, a producer, but above all, a storyteller. And I'd love to ask you, what is the power that you see in storytelling in 2024, in a moment when society is so divided and fractured?
Well, society is really just the stories that we tell each other about one another and about ourselves. That's what history is. That's what the news is. Journalism, our family histories, they're stories. And I think one of the things that I'm really interested in is making sure that different people are able to tell their stories, be heard, be seen, that we're actually embracing different perspectives, and allowing society to be built with these pillars that really move us towards narrative change. Stories that include and embrace everyone, so that there's a sense of belonging, a sense of togetherness. And I think the storytelling, socially and culturally has tilted one way for far too long. And so it's really just about opening it up and making sure everyone has a say.
Speaking of narrative change, your film Origin is now streaming on Hulu, and you have said that it was really important to you to produce and release this movie before the 2024 election. So what impact do you want to have on November?
I won't say that I'm looking to have, an impact in terms of the outcome of the election. I just want people to be a lot more rigorous. I want to see more rigor in our conversations around the things that matter. I feel a general fatigue. I feel like people are exhausted with the onslaught of news, with the onslaught of misinformation, with kind of the tribalism. You're on this side, I'm on this side. And it's produced this kind of, I think there's a laziness, sometimes an apathy, folks really feeling very, very singular and kind of closed off in the way that they want to think. And so the goal of the film is to open us up, to expand a little bit, to ask us to look around, look outside of ourselves, and really see what that kind of closing down really does. It diminishes us as a culture, and it is going to affect our decision making as we come to the elections. So the goal was for the film to just kind of awaken, get us to see one another in a different way, And hopefully that contributes to different conversations and more healthy outcomes.
Have you heard from any moviegoers or audience members about how their perspective was changed after seeing Origin?
A lot of feedback. I mean, folks, one of the beautiful things about the films that I make, that I love and that I'm addicted to, is that I feel that they're in conversation with the audience. The audience is always telling me how they feel about it, either directly afterward or throughout, through their tears, through their comments, through social media, through people walking up to me in the airport. I'm constantly getting feedback on the pictures in ways that some of my other, counterparts who make films don't get to enjoy. They'll hear, oh, I like the film, but I'm actually hearing people telling me their family histories, intimate details about how they experienced the movie, and I'm hearing a lot about people learning new ideas, new ways to define their feelings, new ways to organize their thoughts around a lot of the challenges we're facing as a country.
Now, you also self-funded this film. You raised the $38 million necessary to make it. And I'm wondering if you could talk about the risks and the rewards of taking this approach in movie making.
Well, I didn't self-fund it. I wish I had an extra $38 million hanging around, but I did create the model that allowed us to go to like-minded individuals and philanthropic organizations and say, hey, let's come together and create a community model to finance this film as opposed to a studio model to finance the film. And it was the first time that had been done with a narrative film. You'd see that nonprofit organizations had given money and financing to some documentaries. They call it finishing funds. There had never been a film where all of the budget had come from nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, social impact investment, and I'm proud of the model that we put together, and it really worked.
Did it allow you any sort of extra creative control or freedom in making the movie compared to a traditional studio experience?
Yes, Origin was the most free I've ever been making a project since the early days when I was making $100,000, $50,000 projects on my own with my own money. Because once you start to learn how to make films and they become popular, you are in the studio system, in the streamer system, and they are your partners. And so it is a kind of collective decision-making a lot of times in terms of what the final film or series will be. In this, I was really interested in being completely free in the storytelling without, having to kind of take notes from the studio. I knew what I wanted to say. It was very important for me to say it on a very specific timeline. And so these financing partners really gave me that freedom. They contributed to the film, and then they left me alone. That's the best kind of financing you can ask for. But they trusted what we were looking to do, and they believed in the vision of it. And it created an environment where we shot this film on 3 continents in 37 days. It was made by a Black woman-owned production company, my studio, Array, and it spans 400 years. It covers 7 time periods. To be able to do that independently outside the studio system is very rare. So I'm thrilled with the outcome and excited about doing it again.
You will do it again?
I'm addicted. Yeah, it's addictive. It's addictive to be free. It's addictive to, work with like-minded people on a project that means something to you. And so I won't say that every project I do will be like this, but I hope and I pray I get the chance to do it again.
It's interesting hearing you talk about your message, because I've heard you say before that you care about the craft of movie making, but it's important ultimately for people to hear the story. It doesn't matter if they're watching it on a plane or on their phone. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I get some criticism for that. I don't know why. I think, it comes from, I grew up in Compton, California, where there is no movie theater there. So I really understand what cinema segregation is. I don't think a lot of people understand that easy access to films is not something that everyone enjoys. It's not a privilege that everyone has. And so to diminish the idea of seeing a foreign film or seeing a film that you can't get your hands on a plane or, on a laptop or in a community screening projected on a wall, I have no problems with any of those. I'm really interested in you having the opportunity to see the story in whatever way it can be presented to you. And everyone does not have the good fortune of being able to go to the IMAX on the corner. And so I think, we get into a place where there's a little bit of snobbery about how things are being seen, and it's unfortunate. But I think overall, some of the, most of us are watching films, classic films on a television, classic films on a laptop, on a DVD, back in the day on a video cassette. And so for me, the form is not as important as the access. Now, do I want it to be seen with my full mix, sound mix, and the pristine picture, and all of the things that we've worked so hard to make sure are offered to film lovers? Absolutely, but it's not always possible, and that's okay.
Now, you referenced your early days of filmmaking and the true self-funding, not just the philanthropic model. Would you recommend that to burgeoning filmmakers today?
I would. And when I started making films, there was not as, didn't have as much access to technology that makes the process so much easier. We had to, figure out a way to, get an Avid to edit. Now you can edit on your laptop. We had to get really sophisticated cameras and figure out how we could beg, borrow to get these cameras. Now, by hook or crook, you could make it on your phone. I've seen some beautiful feature films made on iPhone. And so there are so many tools, so much technology now that allows people to express themselves and to embrace the craft of filmmaking. That's why I really think that we should, kind of take off all of these kind of elitist, barriers to entry. The technology is there that allows, anyone to be able to express themselves, and I think that's something that we should embrace and invite.
Now, Melinda Gates was one of your backers on Origin, correct?
She was.
And she recently announced a $1 billion commitment to advancing gender equity. A number of organizations and individuals were named as part of the beneficiaries, and your name was on her website.
Yeah.
What do you plan to do with her support?
Well, let me just say, I'm not a beneficiary. I am, so the announcement, which was, it was, I think hard for some people to decipher, is I'm one of a group of women that she chose to give away the money. So each of these women got a large amount of money, $20 million. And she said, go give it away and do good.
So you have $20 million to give.
I have $20 million to give. And it's an extraordinary honor to be entrusted with that. So it's the journey of identifying organizations, individuals that are global, that benefit women and girls and their wellness.
Are you looking within filmmaking and to
all over?
All over.
Yeah, all over.
That's incredible.
It's a big wide world out there. So it's going to take some time to really watch and learn and meet and travel, and hopefully do good with what she has, really given so many of us the opportunity to share.
What do you think about that model of philanthropy?
I think it's extraordinary. I mean, there's one thing to say, these are the people that I deem worthy or the places that I deem worthy, but then to say, you're interesting, you come from a different background, you may have different concerns or different interests, or you may see something from a different way, you give this piece of it. I mean, what an extraordinary thing. So I kind of feel like a kid in the candy store. There are so many challenges, there's so many people that need help, there's so many organizations that are doing good work that just need a bit of a leg up. There are too many. And so it will be quite a journey and an adventure to try to identify the ones that we might be able to help.
Now, you famously did not pick up a camera until the age of 32, and you have said that your story, your career, your journey is as much about race and gender as it is about age.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about the courage it took to pick up the camera at 32. Can you take us back? What were you thinking and feeling at that moment to make that big change?
Yeah, 32. I mean, right now I'm 51, so 32 sounds like a young chickadee. But at the time, at 32, most people are pretty set in what they're going to do. They've been doing it for probably about 10 years or so, and that was the case for me. I had a very beautiful career as a publicist in the entertainment industry. I marketed and I publicized and I promoted films and television shows, and I loved it. I had always wanted to be around it. But as I was on these sets, I started to see these guys directing, and I was thinking, he should move the camera why doesn't he tell her this? If you just, do they see that thread hanging on the thing? Like I was seeing things, and I was starting to think about story, and I was wishing that I was directing. And one day I thought, well, why don't I try? And so it was really progressive. It was really not a decision that I made and I quit my job that day. One of the things that I tell people when they're looking to make a change or pursue something new is do it slowly but surely. It doesn't have to be all one day. You drop your job and you become the thing. I was a weekend warrior. I was writing scripts on weekends. I was doing things on vacations. I was taking time, before work, after work, to read, to take classes, and just slowly making my way towards the dream until I realized that the making your way towards it is the dream. That's the best part, is the journey, the steps. And so I just really had a beautiful time in kind of, becoming a filmmaker, and I don't discount that time. That time was really an extraordinary time when it was all being unveiled and I was walking towards it.
It sounds like you were a sponge, and you really were a student when you were on set in your prior job. Do you think that was part of what led to your success, was kind of observing as you went versus the traditional path of going to school or starting when you're 10 years old with the camera on your shoulder?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I did have the benefit of being on sets and being able to observe filmmakers. Now, I never saw a woman direct, and I only saw one Black person direct. But I think being a crew member, that long scroll of names that you see at the end of the movie that most people walk out for, don't walk out, that long list of people, I was one of those people. And, when you are a crew member, you are on sets, you are part of the filmmaking process. And so I was observing, I was watching, I was, taking in every day and trying to kind of put the puzzle pieces together so that when I started to have my own sets and be the director and leader of my own crews, I felt very comfortable in that space. And so that's one of the things. You just want to have proximity around whatever you want to do. And sometimes it's hard to gain that access. But I think being close to it, it rubs off on you. And it's a good entry-level way to make your way towards your dreams. Just get close to it however you can.
Now, we are here for the 50 over 50. You mentioned you are 51.
When does this come out?
August 1st. So you won't have
I'll still be 51.
You'll still be 51 when this comes out.
Thank you. Thank you for knowing that.
I did look up your birthday.
Okay.
We have to confirm that everyone is over 50.
Oh, wow.
There are some people who fudge their
trying to sneak into the 50 over 50?
It's a cool club of people. You guys are accomplishing a lot.
The reason why I think this is extraordinary is because when I was young, I always wanted to be in that 30 under 30. I always wanted to be in it, and I never was. And I thought, oh, my chance to be in one of those cool things has passed. But look at me now. I'm 50 over 50. It's fantastic.
It's not too late.
It's not too late.
So I want to ask, is your age an advantage or disadvantage in your line of work?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I think it's an advantage because I started late. So age really didn't play a part in the way that I kind of metabolized or calculated the value of what I was doing. I mean, I jumped in, a good 7 to 8 years behind most of my counterparts who had either gone to film school as college students or who had picked up a camera when they were a kid and were always shooting. So I started late, and I never really accepted the fact that age would hinder me.
When you were in your 20s and 30s, did you ever imagine your career over the age of 50?
I thought I would be a publicist. I never imagined, just when I said that, I got emotional. I never imagined or fathomed what I'm doing now. There was no one that I could look to who was doing what I'm doing now, and I've only been making films for 12 years. There was no Black woman filmmaker who had a consistent, successful career who was making work every year. There were women who had made films, Black women who had made gorgeous, gorgeous films. There would be long stretches of time between when they could get the next film made. And it was always this uphill battle. And so I would look at filmmakers, Spike Lee most prominently, who was working in film, television, music video, commercial, documentary, moving all over the place. And I thought, oh, could a woman do that? Could a Black woman do that? And so I didn't imagine it, not because I didn't see it. It just was never anything that I thought was even possible. So my life every day is a marvel to me. I mean, truly, it's revelatory. I'm walking around inside of a dream, and I know that people are watching me, and the hope is that you're able to, or someone is able to see what I'm doing and feel like, oh yeah, I can do that. In a way that I didn't have. Now, there were Black women who had made incredible films, and I stand on their shoulders, and I want to be really clear about that. But one of the things that, regrettably they didn't have was consistent architecture of support around them so that they could make what they wanted, how they wanted, when they wanted, and where they wanted. And blessedly, I get to do that.
You own your production company, you own Array, you own the ground that it lives on, correct?
Yes, I own the campus.
Can you talk about what that means to you and what that does for your work to have that ownership?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think there's something about space and owning the space. I always looked at Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Studios. She had a whole city block in Chicago. J.J. Abrams has a studio called Bad Robot. Where he owns his buildings. Haile Gerima, legendary Ethiopian filmmaker who's my mentor, has a bookstore and cafe with his editing room in the basement in Washington, D.C. called Sankofa. And these spaces become what Mr. Gerima calls liberated territory. These are spaces where you can truly be free, where you do not have to pass through a studio lot and hope that you're always in the good graces of the corporate entity that allows you to rent space on their campus. I have my own campus, and that space is mine, and it is ours, and it is free, and it is made in our likeness, and it is what we want it to be. And there's something about making work in a free space like that I think embeds itself in the image, in the frames. And I can't believe that we have this space, and we may not always have it, but we have it now, and we're embracing it, and we're making beautiful things there, and we're convening people. We have a theater in the space, so we're showing films, we're sharing films free for the community. It's just, it's a dreamy spot. So I'm really thrilled about it.
What's your advice to women in their 20s and 30s who feel like they either have to rush to fit in all of their accomplishments because of a clock that's ticking in their head, or they might feel like it's too late to make a change?
That just makes me sad when you say someone might feel like it's too late to make a change. We always hear the adage, it's never too late, but truly it is about your decision. You decide when it's too late. You decide when you don't want to try anymore. You decide when you're going to lean in a little bit. You decide how you want to be in the world each day when you wake up. You are the director of your life. You call action in the morning when you wake up. You decide. And so many of us, feel like we don't have the privilege of being the captain of our own destiny. You might have children, you might have economic or financial constraints. There might be all kinds of expectations that you feel you can't break through, but no one should be able to get in here, And if you can't do it on Tuesday, then maybe you'll do it on Thursday. And if you can't do it on Thursday, then maybe you'll do it on Sunday. And if you can't walk all the way across the room, maybe you just take one step, and the next day you take another step. But you decide how far you can go. No one else does. And the more that we realize that, the more you understand that there is no time, except the time that you decide to give yourself.
In 2021, you spoke at the Forbes Power Women Summit about what it took to make that change, and you said, quote, you had to ask yourself, can you change your mind about who you are and what you want to do later in the game? So now, a few years later, I want to ask you, what have you changed your mind about, if anything, recently?
I've changed my mind about a lot of things. I've changed my mind about the way that I want to work within the studio system. There was a time where I really wanted to be in that world. Now I want to be a little hybrid. I want to have one foot in, one foot out. I've changed my mind about the kinds of films that I want to make. I really am interested now in doing something that's wrapped in a genre, where I want to do romance, I want to do thriller, I want to do a mystery, and I still want to say something within those films. I think all of my films, I'm trying to express something, I'm trying to say something, I'm trying to kind of be additive to the world, I'm trying to comment on aspects of injustice that should be corrected and that we should pay attention to. But I'm interested in doing that inside of genre where it's kind of, oh, that was a love story, but it had this in it, or it was a thriller, but it was this. Imagine a Jason Bourne of justice. I don't know. Maybe it could be, who knows? But just to play with different forms. And so that's something new. And I think, you surprise yourself when you stay open, and you will find that almost every day there's a new idea, or you're being led, or your interests go in a different direction, and not to be afraid of that, to lean into it.
I think you've shown such drive over the course of your career, and I wonder, where does that drive come from, do you think?
I don't know. My grandmother always said, if you're bored, you're boring. Everyone's got a story. There's always something to learn in every moment. I feel like I'm so stimulated by everything that's going on around me in such a great way. Life is just a spectacle. Everywhere you look, there's something happening. How can you not be inspired by that? How can you not want to be a part of that? How can you not want to just, wake up and embrace life and see what the day has for you? And so, I get to, as an artist, express that through my work, but everyone's expressing that through their relationships, through their interactions, and I think that drives me, is what will life have in store for me today, and how can I contribute to it? And that's my drive really just comes from feeling very much a part of everything that's going on around me and everyone that's going on around me. I think our society is structured in a way that makes people feel alone, and that we're separate, that we're not a part of one another, but we're here, we're sharing space. I'm looking into your eyes. Wherever you come from, we've landed here in this moment somehow, and that's fascinating to me. All the people in the world, we landed here today. Our paths led us here. That is happening around you every single day. Isn't that enough to be fascinated by? So that's what drives me.
Now, you are a change maker across society, I think is fair to say. And in so many interviews you do, people ask you for your assessment of progress and diversity in either Hollywood or society at large.
What do I say?
Well, I think you have said in the more recent interviews that there's been a lot of conversation, and maybe it's at least good that we're opening these conversations. But I wanted to ask you, are you tired of being the Chief Progress Report Administrator?
I am. It's exhausting. And I really think that these are questions that people need to be answering for themselves. We all are a part of this. Don't ask me about what progress is being made. What progress do you feel is being made? Do you see enough? Do you see places where we can all improve? It's everyone. Everyone has their opinion, but for me, that question is I think it's the wrong question. I don't think it is. Are we done yet? Did we make diversity? You know what I mean? I think it is. How do you feel? Do you feel connected? Do you feel that everyone is included? Have we gotten there yet? How can we all contribute to that? And what is the part that you play in it? These are the questions that I'd like to hear more often, that I don't.
You anticipated my next question. I was going to ask you, what do you wish people asked you? So I'm going to end with two fun questions.
Okay.
Because we had another member of the 50 over 50 say there should be a 50 over 50 book club. So what are you reading right now?
I'm reading a book called The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is a book about a woman that spans her whole life. And it's really interesting to read this book from this woman, and you see her as a teenager until she's, in her elder years. And it's fascinating to kind of watch the journey of a woman through her whole life through this very sassy book with lots of romance and intrigue. Have you read that book?
I loved that book.
I like that book.
I
Yeah.
like to read a lot. You must read a ton, though.
I do.
How fast do you read?
I read pretty fast, but the problem is I'm reading and I'm thinking, is this a movie? Could this be a movie? Would this be in the movie? You know, almost every conversation, I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm thinking, could you be a movie? Or I'll be talking to someone and someone will say something interesting and I'll be in the conversation and all I want to do is take my phone and write down what they said because people say great lines of dialogue. I just want to, sometimes I'll be looking at a person and say, remember that. Just trying to remember the line in my head. By the time I'm done with the conversation, I've forgotten the line. But yes, I feel like, you know, there's stories all around us. And they just ignite my imagination all the time. And so I don't even have to look for them. They're just there.
Well, we are better off for you finding them and telling them. So Ava DuVernay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.